How did Steven become the strongest gem on the entire show?
Steven, you just don't know what you're talking about.
It sounds like maybe you don't know what I'm talking about!
Is it cold?
Yep, it's cold. Apparently by science.
Does that mean it's a diamond?
Not only can his shield block all of the other diamond's most powerful attacks, but by the end of Steven Universe Future, our boy was moving so fast that he could practically just stop time itself.
Father Time?
Hey look, I'm over here.
Then there's Lapis Lazuli, a gem made with so much raw power that she was ridiculously able to bench press the entire ocean. With a cracked gemstone, mind you, and being out of commission for thousands of years.
We are the Crystal Gems!
Let's keep it real. Who do you guys think would win if Blue Diamond, a gem whose main power is to transfer her emotions onto others, went up against Lapis in her prime? If you said Lapis, I'm going to need you to subscribe right now. I like you. And if you said Blue Diamond, you're free to leave a comment letting me know why. Who knows, maybe you could even change my mind. Just so you know, Google seems to believe that Lapis is the strongest gem ever. But it also says that she's a diamond for some reason, so yeah.
So even though it doesn't look like your standard typical diamond, this is in fact a diamond.
Steven Universe's magic system is by far one of the most unbalanced aspects of the show. Gems like Lapis Lazuli were made with hydrokinesis, the power to fully control bodies of water. Gems like Desert Glass were made with Samokinesis, the power to fully control sand, and gems like White Topaz were ridiculously made with Telekinesis, the power to move anything with their minds, Possession, the power to fully control inanimate objects, and in case you somehow thought that these types of gems weren't already stacked, then they could also just straight up manipulate the environment around themselves too. 2 out of 3 of these gems accomplish these outlandish feats without even taking physical form. If any one of these monsters went rogue and decided to stop holding back, they'd easily be able to blitz through the Great Diamond Authority in seconds. Remember, gems don't get tired. Lapis could have taken Earth's entire ocean with her back to Homeworld if she really wanted to and given the planet a well-deserved power washing.
1/2 of a diamond.
Why would the diamonds be this carefree about having these undeniably dangerous types of gems roaming around Homeworld without at least giving them some kind of leash to ensure their own safety? Remember when we learned back in season 2 that all of the diamond communicators were rigged with explosives just because? Why didn't the diamonds do something similar with gem production?
Well, that tape recorder seems to be helping.
No, it's not!
Seems a lot more efficient now, huh? The truth is that Steven Universe doesn't really have that much of a magic system at all to begin with, not exactly. Gems on a whole can sort of just do anything they want. Again, not only is it confirmed that gems don't get tired, not only have we seen the crystal gems showcase crazy levels of their own powers that they refuse to use later on when it would clearly be helpful to the team, but gems seem to be able to develop brand new powers and lose their old powers simply based on their own emotions. The diamonds themselves were unlocking new powers of their own 2 episodes before the series finale of Steven Universe Future, powers that frustratingly did the complete opposite thing of what their original powers did.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
Remember when I said that Steven became the strongest gem on the show? Well, let me introduce you to the actual strongest gem from all of Steven Universe canon, Glass Ghost. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe and the Crystal Gems explored the possibility of life after death for gems, introduced a new gem that was hinted at having ties to rose quartz, and even featured an antagonist that threatened the lives of every human being on Earth. The comic issue starts with Steven leading the Crystal Gems to his favorite camping spot while explaining to them that he spent a ton of time in the area with Greg when he was younger. Steven walks off on his own into the dark forest in order for him to gather up some more firewood for the night, but because of his decision, he'd find himself in the middle of a massive conspiracy, after he ends up getting his hand cut on an ominous piece of broken glass. After finishing setting up their camping spot, the Crystal Gems all decide to gather around and tell scary stories while eating s'mores to get the authentic camping experience. Steven begins by telling them a cliched story about a babysitter who loses sight of the 2 children that she was babysitting, resulting in Steven's audience questioning the practicality of his story. Garnet and Pearl reveals that they never told any scary stories while on Homeworld, but they both managed to remember one story from gem history that was told on Earth. The Haunting of the Glass Ghost. At first, it seemed to be a story that was just made up by Garnet and Pearl themselves to keep Amethyst in check when she was still behaving like a toddler. The story is legitimately terrifying though. It literally told the tale of how a young Amethyst became overconfident, fought against a mysterious gem called Glass Ghost, and then got turned into glass herself, leading to her gruesome shattering. Yeah, as you'd expect, the story manages to ruin Steven's entire trip. That is, until the crystal gems confirm that the story really was in fact only made up to keep Amethyst in check when she was young and reckless. Later that night, the crystal gems all settle into their camping spot and pretend to go to sleep to make sure that they didn't ruin the illusion. But a worse kind of trouble arises after Steven leaves his camping bag to investigate an eerie sound that was keeping him up all night, which results in him running into the real Glass Ghost, proving that there was definitely more to a legend than even the other crystal gems knew about. The uncertainty surrounding Glass Ghost's existence causes the crystal gems to return to Beat City earlier than planned, but the distance away from his favorite camping spot wouldn't help to remedy Steven's newly developed unease. Pearl, realizing the consequences of this story on Steven's mental health, sits him down and explains one important concept that would hopefully finally help him get over his newly found belief in the Glass Ghost. She lets him know that ghosts don't exist, period. So the gems are all atheists. Anyway, the situation almost immediately begins to spiral out of control when Glass Ghost mysteriously returns, and with her unique powers decide to make right work of the crystal gems and turn every single human being in Beat City into glass. Steven shockingly becomes the first crystal gem to successfully land a hit on Glass Ghost by forcefully expanding his bubble after catching her off guard. After learning about Steven's mini victory against Glass Ghost, the crystal gems come up with a daring plan to track her down, but this time battle against her together as a team. Amethyst gets first crack at the Glass Ghost and actually manages to smack her hard into a tree, but becomes the first crystal gem to fall victim to her. Garnet and Pearl would also succumb to a ghastly grip seconds later, leaving Steven alone to face off against the most powerful opponent that the crystal gems have ever fought. Unsurprisingly, although Steven gives it his all, he doesn't do too well. Glass Ghost actually decides to poof herself in order for her to reverse the damage that she did to Beat City and keep Steven safe, confirming that she was a corrupted gem the entire time. Glass Ghost, a gem made with the ability to alter her own density and turn anything or anyone that she touches into solid glass, had to defeat herself. And I seriously don't even think that Pink Steven could get around her instant regeneration and raw strength. If I'm being honest, I really wish that Glass Ghost's storyline was featured on the actual show, even though she's technically still canon to the lore. There's a lot to love about Steven Universe, but the writers choosing to not set up a stable magic system is the very reason why it's impossible to get invested in most of the show's many fight scenes. Can I get a show of hands of how many of us forgot that Pearl was able to manipulate sand at one point? I feel like that power in particular would have helped the crystal gems in a ton of different situations if Pearl didn't apparently also forget that she could do it. Steven Universe's magic system definitely leaves a lot to be desired, but I still don't think that it's beyond redemption. Steven Universe managed to create one of the most inclusive fandoms on the internet, but this also meant that the series featured some of the most controversial ships in recent memory.
Dad?
Keep watching.
Despite being supported by the actual voice actors of Lapis and Peridot, Lapidot went down as being one of the worst ships on the entire show, and for good reason.
You?
And now you want to see if we can cut it.
Yeah, I'm really curious. You know, that you got Garnet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the show itself doesn't even have any real romantic moments between these two. Ironically, I was a Lapidot shipper myself when the show was airing though, but that's only because I fell for all of the extra content that Rebecca Sugar and the Crewniverse kept pumping out, with the bandmates genuinely having fun and spending quality time together. Seriously, is this Lapidot scene taken from the actual show romantic in the slightest?
Are you okay?
How about now? Isn't it just a little bit insane that there isn't a single Lapis ship that wasn't based on a deeply unhealthy foundation? Well, except for...
Don't hold back!
Got it!
Let's play a game. Which one of these totally made up Stefani ships is perfectly fine within the context of the show? Stefani x Kiki or Stefani x Kevin? For those of you who actually answered that question, I'm going to need you to give yourself up to the police right now. And if you didn't fall for my trap, then you're free to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I think it likes you.
It's not really gem quality, it's got lots of inclusions and stuff, but it's still hard.
Alright, just so you know, because I already feel guilty, I've been lying to you. Stevoni x Kiki isn't a fan-made ship, it's canon. It was the focus of an official comic issue where Steven and Connie went a little bit too far, sending Kiki into a fate that I wouldn't wish on anyone: teenage depression. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 2, in a really dark metaphor, explored the consequences of not being upfront with potential romantic partners about crucial details within our lives. The comic issue starts off with Steven tagging along with Connie to watch the movie adaptation of her favorite book series, The Unfamiliar Familiar, when they get rejected for being too young to watch the premiere without an adult. Naturally, the upsetting news that her favorite series chose to prioritize romances over properly adapting its compelling plot causes Connie to freak out. The duo decide to fuse in order for them to sneak into the movie anyway, but doesn't realize that Steven didn't have an idea of his own to fuse along with Connie's, leading Stevoni to storm off and accidentally bump into a familiar face. Kiki becomes flustered by Stevoni almost immediately and explains to them that she was shopping for a prom dress. Stevoni, excited by the idea of trying on fancy new clothes, decides to shadow Kiki, leading to the two of them growing closer and planning to go together to Kiki's school dance later that night. Steven and Connie spend the day writing a list based on everything that they'd need to blend in at the prom and appear like a real teenager. Except they're not a real teenager. Rebecca Sugar confirmed that Stevoni is the sum of Steven and Connie's ages, meaning that they were at least 27 during the story arc. And considering the fact that Kiki is only 17, with a little help from the crystal gem, Stevoni gets themselves ready and escorts Kiki to the school prom. But things wouldn't go as smoothly as they'd expect. Stevoni, finding it incredibly difficult to feel like they actually belong, loses their cool, causing Kiki to step in and ask them for a dance. You have to wonder what's going on inside of Sour Cream's mind right now. This is the second time that he's seen a questionable situation with Stevoni play out in front of him. Oh, he doesn't care.
Nope.
Sour Cream beginning to play more romantic music causes Stevoni to get a little bit uncomfortable. But when Kiki begins to get more touchy while asking them out on a proper date, they'd get extremely uncomfortable and run off into the hallway, coming undone quickly after. Steven and Connie begin to panic uncontrollably, realizing the serious situation that they've gotten themselves into, and wondering if they should tell everyone that they meet that they're actually two children fused together using alien space rock magic. Steven and Connie decide that Kiki doesn't deserve to know anything about their true identity, and after fusing again, they'd offer to keep hanging out with her as a friend. Kiki, after hiding the pain the best that she could, accepts Stevoni's offer and plan to go see the Unfamiliar Familiar next week. What kind of twisted message is this? So Stevoni is just going to keep taking advantage of Kiki to get what she wants out of her, while also not letting her know a secret that she definitely deserves to know. Great comic issue overall, but man, that ending just doesn't hit.
Man, I'm gonna break my monitor, I swear!
Do you guys remember Permafest? Did you ship Permafest? Do you ship? Permafest is one of those ships that just feels wrong even if it technically isn't. Pearl was one of the original members of the Crystal Gems, and she basically looked after Armorfest when she was still adjusting to living in Dead City among the humans. And being one of the original members of the Crystal Gems, Pearl was definitely written to behave like more of a big sister to Armorfest. I absolutely used to ship Permafest though. Before we knew about their complex backstory, and the gems were all just basically different versions of Steven's mom. Square Mom, Fun Mom, Bird Mom, and Steven Universe issue number 6, when it was released, only made me ship them harder. The comic issue starts off with Pearl being stressed out about having to look after everyone else on the team, when she decides to continue training with Hollow Pearl in hopes that the training would help clear her mind. Things don't go exactly as planned though, as they rarely do, leading Pearl to let Amethyst know about all of the pent-up frustration that she was holding onto recently, and admitting that she was looking for a way to let it all out. Amethyst then invites Pearl to wrestle alongside her as the Pink Panther, and with Garnet's blessing, the duo actually work incredibly well well together, taking out the competition. They first face off against the Wolves of Wall Street. Purple Puma takes down one of the wolves herself, while the Pink Panther distracts the other long enough for Purple Puma to pin him down as well. After a pep talk from Purple Puma, the duo enter the ring with the Brothers Construction, one of the strongest wrestling teams in Beat City. The Pink Panther gracefully dodges one of the brothers' attacks and then goes in for a sneak attack but gets decked in the face by his elbow. Pearl, pinned down and already having a really rough week, almost decides to give up, but Amethyst, in a really heartfelt moment, lets her know just how much she's always respected her. This gives Pearl the motivation needed to get up and throw her competitor off the stage, leading Garnet to safely catch him. After the Pink Panther taps out, Purple Puma quickly takes down the second brother, leading the duo to enter in the ring with the actual strongest wrestling team in all of Beat City, the Good Looking Gang. The Pink Panther and Purple Puma, flawlessly working together, struggle during their fight against the Good Looking Gang at first, but eventually lose. Yeah, they end up losing. Amethyst and Pearl grow closer together as a result of their shared loss and develop a newly found respect for each other's interests. Steven Universe was always a show that prioritized interpersonal relationships over its overarching plot, a fact that can be confirmed when you remember that Rebecca Sugar was basically willing to sacrifice the entire show to make sure that her vision on Ruby and Sapphire's arc was completed properly. The show choosing to value relationships over its plot wasn't inherently a bad thing. It's one of the many reasons that made the show become so incredibly inclusive in the first place. And because of this, I still think that Rebecca Sugar made the right call. Did you know that Lapis was the one responsible for destroying half of Russia because Homeworld wanted to install the galaxy warp on the planet?
Should she suffer? All right, clap if you think she should suffer.
Trash.
I know.
Why wasn't this crucial information given to us on the show, I hear you asking? I'll tell you why. It's because our boy Steven wasn't there to see it.
Why couldn't she just stop the colonization herself?
She tried.
Politically correct diamond, is that it?
Yeah, that's what Cody said.
Imagine a world rich with history and lore drops just like this one, but the only thing standing in our way of making those exciting new discoveries is a relatively carefree 14-year-old boy. Side note, are we really supposed to believe that Lapis was having so much fun with Steven that she accidentally made the generous 22-hour flight to Russia and then back to the barn without the Crystal Gems and Greg getting a little worried about him? How did this happen? Steven Universe is one of the first Western cartoons to feature a storyline that is only told from the perspective of a main character. And this is the greatest reason for why I believe that Steven Quart's universe is the perfect protagonist. That's right, I know how to make positive videos about my favorite shows too.
Finally!
Let's play a game. Which Crystal Gem hasn't tried to get Steven killed before on purpose? Yeah, Lapis, Peridot and Bismuth need no explanation. Pearl was more than happy to watch our boy fall to his death, and if any one of Amethyst's attacks landed while she was fighting him, it would have been a wrap. So that just leaves Garnet, the only Crystal Gem that hasn't tried to get Steven killed. I said on purpose. Garnet and Steven without a doubt have some of my favorite interactions on the entire show. That's because instead of portraying Garnet as this bland and robotic parental figure, she was written to be an incredibly dynamic character who also took Steven's advice even when he was a child.
If you just throw enough garnet at a diamond for long enough, it'll cut through it.
That was easy.
Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 8 told the story of one of Steven and Garnet's most heartwarming adventures. As in, it featured a corrupted gem with the power to sense the heartbeats of all organic life. A corrupted gem that led Steven to discovering one of his family's greatest secrets. The comic issue starts off with Steven and Garnet preparing to tackle a corn maze together at the barn, without the use of Garnet's future vision of course, as Lars and Bug get ready to enter the maze along with them. The race begins to find the maze's exit, and we're almost immediately shown evidence that something really big has been lurking around the area, but is that All Might?
Do you remember how I gave my power to you? What I said that day? Eat this! No, not that part.
Steven sneakily uses a mysterious hole in the ground to cheat the entire maze, reaching its ending before anyone else in his group, choosing to spend the rest of his time socializing with a raccoon. Moments before it's grabbed and taken underground by a giant monster, Steven, fearing for the long-term safety of his new friend, rushes into action and discovers a secret underground compartment in the hole, leading to him finding his family's secret underground bunker, which was now being inhabited by a peaceful, corrupted lizard gem who was taking care of a local population of raccoons. After being caught back up to the surface by Garnet, Steven decides that it'd be smart to not tell her about the weird situation happening in his underground bunker, but tells her anyway once he realizes that she already saw what he did using future vision. Steven assures Garnet that the corrupted gem living in the maze is completely harmless and would never do anything to force humans down in the underground bunker against their will. So the corrupted gem living in the maze forces Lars underground against his will, leading Garnet and Steven to venture into the bunker in hopes of saving his life before he gets smothered to death. Without listening to Steven's objections, Garnet pulls the corrupted gem by brutally smashing her face in, causing all of the baby raccoons to run off in every direction. Steven, unable to get his mind off of the raccoons living without their caretaker, decides to enter the burning room without the other gem's knowledge in hopes of getting the lizard monster's gemstone, but Garnet gets there first. Steven and Garnet release the corrupted gem back into the DeMayo family bunker, trusting it to look after the baby raccoons once more. You guys remember how awkward Last One Out of Beat City was? The episode clearly would have been structurally better if Steven wasn't in it. This was undeniably written to be a Pearl and Amethyst episode, with Steven looking in the background of every scene like a creep. Steven Universe issue number 15 being a story where Ruby and Sapphire solve a dangerous dungeon together, as a light parody of the Fireboy and Water Girl series was faced with a similar dilemma of being literally forced to include Steven. That's right, not even the series' official run of comics was freed from the perspective rule, but this story in particular actually managed to pull it off flawlessly. Steven was not only a vital part of Ruby and Sapphire's mission, but it's clear that the entire story in itself wouldn't have worked if Steven wasn't in it. The issue begins with Steven playing one of his new games when Garnet offers him to go on another mission together. Naturally, Steven agrees and Garnet explains that the mission is to recover two volatile gemstones called the Frozen Fragment and the Scorching Shard. Two gemstones that were both related to the shooting star, as in they'd explode if they weren't handled properly. After warping to the mission's location, the duo race to the entrance, but Steven beats Garnet there by using his floating powers to give himself an extra boost. Once the duo finally enter the temple securing the gemstones, Garnet reveals that if the red and blue gemstones aren't kept at their preferred temperatures, they'd instantly get warped back to their original position even if they're bubbled. Do this enough times and they both explode. Because of this, Garnet decides to unfuse, giving Ruby and Sapphire a chance to keep the gemstones at their preferred temperatures, carefully carrying them outside of the temple and then trying to bubble them. On the count of 3, Ruby and Sapphire grab the Scorching Shard and the Frozen Fragment respectively, leaving them with the simple task of taking their gemstones outside to bubble them. Naturally, Ruby and Sapphire end up distracting each other, causing the gemstones to teleport back to their original position and activating one of the temple's traps. Ruby and Sapphire quickly form Garnet to save Steven from being roasted alive. Steven and Garnet gather their thoughts and attempt to retrieve the two gemstones again using the exact same plan, leading to them getting the exact same results. Except this time the temple would activate an ice trap instead of a fire one. Steven ingeniously comes up with a plan to be Ruby and Sapphire's guide on their third attempt, ensuring that they wouldn't stop halfway through their mission this time to start flirting with each other. With Steven as the official leader of the mission, the team managed to successfully complete their daunting task and Ruby and Sapphire celebrate by continuously complimenting each other, this time without having to worry about an ancient temple getting in their way. Garnet reforms once more, and having completed their mission, the team begin to make their way back home.
Priceless. There are some things money can't buy.
If I'm being perfectly honest, Steven kind of started off as a brat, but that was by design. One of the coolest behind the scenes aspects of the show by far was the fact that Rebecca Sugar revealed that she actually planned for Rose Quartz to be Pink Diamond before the show even began production. When you learn this, it becomes way more clear why Steven and Pink Diamond are agreed to be the best written characters on the entire show. They're literally two sides of the same coin. Steven slowly became a more impatient character as the show went on, and Pink Diamond, having her arc playing out in reverse, became a more patient and loving person, getting us to fully experience the story of how Steven found out the truth about his mother from his perspective. Was one of the most impactful moments in cartoon history, and then unpacking the entire journey of how we were able to get to this point in the first place brought the entire series together. Genuinely a masterclass in storytelling. Steven Universe was an amazing show that literally gave us the chance to grow up with its main character. We were forced to view this magical world through his eyes, and now that we have a full picture, I understand that this is something that should definitely be celebrated. After Cross-Gem Fusion was outlawed by Homeworld, every gem in existence wanted to try it out for themselves. Every single one of them.
Fusion is just a cheap tactic to make weak gems stronger.
That's the problem with you fusions. Sooner or later, you will become sentimental.
Is that it?
Just a second.
So this is what Homeworld thinks of fusion.
Cross-Gem Fusion was basically called out as being a huge no-no by the Diamonds because it promoted chaos within a society where everyone was literally made to fit into their own predetermined roles.
Whoa. What's that?
Full disclosure, Fusion has had multiple different interpretations on the show in itself. For some characters, fusion was a way of acting on their romantic feelings for one another. For others, it was only a means to an end. And according to a decent portion of the fandom, fusion was the Gems' version of doing the deed.
One word: sex. Fusion in all forms of the word is just that. Sex between gems.
Who had been saying that? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that?
Now, in the defense of fans with this headcanon, every time that the gems fuse on the show, they dance. Very provocatively, for no other reason other than the fact that they want to.
When we synchronize our forms, we can combine into a powerful fusion gem named Opal.
Nope, gems can also fuse by hugging, standing on top of each other, and just by making the slightest bit of contact. So that just raises the question, why do the crystal gems dance to fuse if they don't need to? Well, I don't know, but I think I found a way for us to find out the answer.
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
The general consensus within the fandom is that the crystal gems developed fusion dancing on their own as a means of differentiating themselves from Homeworld, which makes sense. One of the first things that we learned about Rose Quartz was the fact that her absolute favorite hobbies were singing and dancing, and leading Pearl on, but this is not the video for that. Circling back to our original discussion of gem fusion representing something more adult. The dark implications behind this headcanon makes the arc where Pearl tricks Garnet into fusing with her over and over again much worse, and I really don't like it.
It's just so much fun being sardonyx with you.
God damn, girl.
Remember that during this arc, Pearl was still deeply troubled about losing Rose Quartz, so it would make perfect sense that this was her way of dealing with the fusion aspect of her trauma. And that's not me justifying Pearl's actions, because she was definitely in the wrong. But I just don't think that the writers intended to teach kids about one of the darkest lessons out there when they set out to write this arc.
No, we just needed a reason to fuse.
This is low even for you!
Now, one of the actually most disappointing aspects of fusion on Steven Universe was the way that the series chose to handle their fight scenes. The vast majority of the battles featuring fusions on the show were given some of the most bland choreography that I've ever seen, and worst of all, they never felt like we were watching the characters fighting at their fullest potential. We all know what these characters are capable of individually, so why do they seemingly get weaker when they fuse?
I can't wait to tear you gems apart!
All talk, no action.
Ironically, one of the best fusion fight scenes went down during the series' official run of comics. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 18 not only blessed us with a rematch between Steven and Amethyst, but we also got an all-out epic battle between Stevonnie and Opal at none other than the Sky Arena. The comic issue opens inside of the temple with Amethyst making one of her most elaborate sandwiches yet, when Steven and Connie excitedly get ready to enter the next stage of their training with Pearl. Amethyst surprisingly gets invited to tag along with the group by Pearl herself, and she reluctantly accepts. After everyone warps to the Sky Arena, Pearl lets Amethyst know that she planned on teaching Steven and Connie alongside her this time, because of her incredible success in helping both of them progress so quickly during the Jasper Beat City attack and the first Smoky Quartz incident. Pearl decides to give Connie a private lesson, allowing Amethyst to do the same with Steven. But once Amethyst realizes that she didn't really have any lessons to teach Steven, she instead opts to have another one-on-one fight with him. Amethyst opens with a classic spin dash attack, but Steven, ready to handle her trick this time, dodges every attempt from her to steamroll him. Amethyst, noticing just how ineffective her ground attacks became against Steven, leaps into the air while summoning 2 weapons, whipping Steven with her first one, leading to him blocking it with his shield and grabbing his leg with the other. Steven, thinking fast, summons his bubble, a move that instantly saves him from being at the mercy of his teacher. This causes Amethyst to congratulate him a little bit too loudly, which disturbs Pearl and Connie's session. After the first round of training, Pearl, losing a little bit of faith in Amethyst's approach, decides to switch partners with her, leading Amethyst to opening up to Connie about her clear lack of teaching skills. Connie lets Amethyst know that Pearl gave her books to catch up on during the previous session, and Amethyst actually decides to read them with Connie as part of her training. When Pearl and Steven get back, everyone decides to take a short break, and fascinatingly enough, Pearl opens up to Amethyst about not being sure about her own teaching strategy either. Steven and Connie reassure their teachers that they were both doing a great job, leading Pearl and Amethyst to combining their teaching strategies and challenging their students to an all-out tag team fight. Back at the temple, Garnet, catching onto the concerning incoming battle using her future vision, instantly decides to warp to the Sky Arena, preparing to intervene if a tag team match went too far. So the fight begins with Amethyst and Pearl trying to quickly take down their students, but Steven and Connie both successfully block their sneak attacks, or so they thought. Thinking quickly, Steven summons his bubble again, this time around Connie too, dashing across the stadium in order for the duo to recover Connie's sword. Steven and Connie, being overly excited at how great they've been working together in the match so far, leads them to accidentally fusing with each other. Amethyst and Pearl, seeing the perfect opportunity to take their students' training to an even greater level, decide to form Opal, leading to one of my favorite fusion fights in the entire series. Opal aims one of her Omega arrows directly at Stefani and fires at full power, but misses because of Stefani's incredible speed and acrobatic skills. Stefani, now airborne and with no way to dodge any more incoming arrows, gets another Omega arrow fired at her from an extremely focused Opal. A deadly barrage of arrows lands all over the Sky Arena, but Stefani, quickly summoning their shield, blocks all of them that were fleeing their way. After crash landing into the Sky Arena at full speed as a result of blocking Opal's arrows, Stefani sneakily summons a spiky bubble from inside of a massive dust cloud surrounding them, rushing out of it at Opal and landing a perfect blow to the stomach, completely knocking the wind out of her before she was able to fire any more arrows. Opal, being outplayed, admits defeat, leading Garnet to finally revealing herself and congratulating Stefani and their teachers for the amazing training session. The team, satisfied with their newly found knowledge, along with Steven and Connie working up a bit of an appetite, leads all of them to going out for cookie cuts. Can I tell you guys a secret? While I was doing research for this video, I kind of lost myself for a few days trying to figure out the height of Obsidian, and I still don't know how tall she is.
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
Yeah, that was the first thing I tried. Nobody knows how tall Obsidian is. Why does nobody know how tall Obsidian is? My search for the truth began where most of our worldviews are shattered, Reddit. I stumbled upon a post claiming that Obsidian was revealed to be approximately 206 feet tall by the Steven Universe wiki. In fact, a staff member of the wiki would soon debunk this postful. Digging deeper, I learned that the only time that we've ever gotten a confirmed height in Steven Universe has been Steven's own height all the way in Steven Universe future as a result of his medical report. This gave fans an unconventional yet reliable unit of measurement to finally be able to calculate the heights of our favorite fusions, the Steven. Sardonyx is 3 Stevens tall, Sugilite, Alexandrite, Blue and Yellow Diamond are all 8 Stevens tall, and Obsidian, well, we don't really know how many Stevens tall she is, because for one, Steven is a part of a giant woman. Fusion was always one of the main attractions on Steven Universe, and it worked extremely well to solidify a lot of the relationships of some of its greatest characters. Who knows, maybe if Rebecca Sugar was actually given more time to work on the show, we could have gotten better handled fight scenes. Or maybe even a canon explanation as to why the Crystal Gems always chose to dance to Fuse even when it wasn't necessary. As it is, Fusion did serve its intended purpose, and while we didn't get to see every gem fuse, the fusions that we did get were all extremely meaningful. While Steven Universe wasn't able to fully explore every element that it introduced, the series did at least manage to answer a decent portion of its most burning questions, except for one. That's right, today we're talking about the controversial political landscape on Steven Universe.
What? Why have they died?
Look, I already know that most of you are around my age. And I get it, but we can't keep ignoring politics forever.
That was fun, but a boy on the cusp of manhood can't spend the whole day whackering.
Rebecca Sugar confirmed that the world of Steven Universe in itself was set in an alternate timeline, something that I didn't fully process until recently.
I accidentally created an alternate timeline.
Another one.
I mean, yeah, in this timeline there was an entire alien war that took place on the Earth. A war that cost the planet a ridiculous amount of land, to say the least. There's also the fascinating fact that humanity has apparently been quarantining some of the gem's most dangerous locations to ensure the safety of their people.
This is all very nice, but it doesn't solve the mystery.
How does humanity being exposed to gems earlier than we originally thought explain their absence in recent gem activities? How far is too far for the people living in this timeline? Let's say hypothetically that I came to your house, greeted your parents, and then proceeded to smack you across your face. Would your parents, knowing about my existence beforehand, change your reaction to my clear act of disrespect against your face? I doubt it would. Nobody is going to let a bunch of aliens with a weakness that could easily be exploited with a single bullet fly into their territory and take advantage of them without attempting to fight back over the course of thousands of years. People don't even behave like that today with other nations.
He's out of line, but he's right.
If a gemstone is able to be cracked by simply landing on a giant rock or being stepped on, and most gems don't even have super speed, are we seriously going to argue that a gun wouldn't be able to instantly take most of these guys down?
We don't do that here.
Look, I love the crystal gems, but if I lived in this timeline, I wouldn't exactly describe them as being a team that were doing their job right. Are you kidding me?
We can't fight these things forever. Well, we can, but I don't want to.
You what?
The vast majority of the time that the crystal gems engage with a supernatural threat, they were casually leaving even more long-lasting battle damage behind. Expensive long-lasting battle damage, I might add.
This is the worst!
I mean, somebody has to be paying for all of this. And I have a hunch that Garnet's salary after working one day at the Big Donut isn't really going to cover it.
We're not going back to the same economy. This will be a different economy.
But the extra money that she's pulling in from a secret life of crime might.
I found a phone.
Whose is it?
That's not important.
Remember that one episode from season 4 that would have been a million times better if our boy Steven wasn't in it?
Here's a bonus treat. We already know that diamonds are the hardest substance on the planet.
Well, based on this episode, we learned about the troubling priorities of a police force as an organization in this timeline. Check this out. Destroying private property? No problem. Damaging a motel room? Pff, what family hasn't? Withholding the planet's entire ocean and then releasing all of that raw pressure back into the ecosystem? Causing irreparable amounts of damage to all sea vessels and marine life? Nothing to see here. Running a red light? Well, that's just diabolical. You better catch those criminals before they drive off into outer space. One of Steven Universe's biggest and most intrusive gem-related conspiracies that directly affected all of modern civilization took place during the series' official run of comics. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe Crystal Clean seriously becoming one of my all-time favorite stories to come out of this entire franchise. Fully explored the horrific consequences of the gem war, technically featured the first gem to be brought back after being shattered, and even featured an antagonist that outmatched the crystal gems in every possible way, threatening to bring a new era of devastation to the planet. The comic issue being set in season 5 after Lapis decides to hide on the moon base, hilariously starts with the crystal gems taking advantage of a moment of peace by attempting to clean the entire temple. After an overdramatic pep talk from Garnet, the crystal gems reluctantly begin cleaning the temple and actually manage to complete this project within only a few hours. This leads the team to deciding to celebrate their mini victory by having a beach day, inviting Peridot to come along with them with little to no luck. So the crystal gems change into their casual outfits before heading outside. But as soon as they'd reach the beach, they'd stumble upon something unexplainable. The entire beach was covered in a mysterious green sludge that was extremely sticky, trapping anything or anyone who got stuck in it. Yellowtail, blaming the crystal gems for the seemingly supernatural mess, argues with them while explaining that the green sludge was already beginning to contaminate the ocean. The Pizza family and Yellowtail, confident that Steven, or someone who looked exactly like him, was the one responsible for this catastrophe, practically forces the crystal gems into cleaning all of it up all on their own. Steven reiterates the fact that the crystal gems' job was to protect the Earth and that they'd gladly tackle this new mystery, causing the citizens of Beat City to agree with him before going back to preparing for the incoming summer rush. Spending the rest of the day taking care of the green slime causes the crystal gems to head back to the temple earlier than planned, barely escaping a confrontation with Steven's revenge-focused doppelganger. The following morning, the crystal gems learned that not only did all of the green sludge return to its exact same position, but there was now additional amounts of green sludge scattered around the temple itself. Steven stumbles upon the culprit of this bizarre crusade, a green sludge monster taking his form, leading the crystal gems to attempting to hunt it down. Every single attack that they'd throw at the sludge monster would end in failure because of its incredible regeneration ability and sticky texture. But because of Greg's help, they discovered that one of its only weaknesses was water. After the comical defeat of the sludge monster by Greg, the crystal gems failed to get any closer to stopping it because somehow it didn't have a gemstone for them to bubble. Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, deeply confused by this development, managed to get Peridot interested enough to help them on the case. The crystal gems worked together throughout the day to secure a list of items required for them to create a powerful water-based weapon, in hopes that it would come in handy while continuing the investigation. Peridot completes her genius contraption, utilizing a powerful artifact called the Cloud Crystal to give it the ability to continuously produce water, before naming it the Hydropack. Steven becomes the wielder of the Hydropack and takes it for a test drive, leading him to finding the sludge monster intriguingly painting a star symbol on the side of a random building. Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl almost immediately corner the sludge monster inside of an alleyway, but it uses a nearby pipe drain to escape to the rooftops, causing Steven to fighting it on his own using the Hydropack. Ronaldo, creepily getting a taste of a green sludge, leads the crystal gems to making a massive discovery. Whatever gem was responsible for these attacks had chlorokinesis, the power to manipulate fruits and vegetables, because the green sludge was actually mashed avocados. The citizens of Beat City, weirdly refusing to give up any more information about the case once they learned that avocados were involved, causes Steven to be called down to the sewers alone by a mysterious informant. Buck Dewey, revealed to be the informant, tells Steven, who came down to the sewers with Peridot, one of his father's greatest secrets. Apparently, when Bill was still the mayor of Beat City, he struck a deal with Marty to store his guacamole inside of a silo on his private property. This deal gave Bill and Buck more than enough money to continue living the lifestyle that they both grew accustomed to, and the silo harboring Marty's guacamole was also the location of the individual who's been mysteriously targeting the crystal gems. The sludge monster, growing angry at Steven for continuing to ruin her plans, decides to attack him, but this time without holding back. Steven, Buck, and Peridot, running for their lives, quickly make their way out of the sewers, but before they manage to get any further, the sludge monster, closely following behind them, unleashes her rage on the surface. Peridot, thinking quickly, uses her ferrokinesis to shut the entrance of the sewers, brutally slicing off the tentacles of the sludge monster. The next morning, Steven, realizing the seriousness of the situation, asks Peridot to help him defeat the gem hiding inside of a silo, but Peridot, terrified of facing a gem that reminds her of Lapis, finds it difficult to accept his offer. Eventually, Steven does manage to convince Peridot to help him, leading the duo to meeting up with Buck once more in order for them to finish what they all started. The squad, now wielding water guns, still manages to struggle against the sludge monster as it shows them the full extent of its raw power. Bill, Dewey, along with the rest of the crystal gems, show up with their own water-themed weapons ready for the incoming battle. With the arrival of all of its targets, the sludge monster decides to take its final form by absorbing every ounce of guacamole left in Bill's silo. Garnet and Amethyst form Sugarlight in hopes of giving them a fighting chance against the kaiju level gem, but swinging around their massive flail and throwing methodical punches still proves to be completely ineffective against their monstrous opponent. Garnet, recognizing the roar of the sludge monster from within Sugarlight, causes Steven to confront Pearl about keeping even more secrets from him. Pearl explains that before the sludge monster was corrupted, she was a crystal gem who followed World's Quartz and fought alongside them during the Gem War. She was cornered by a squadron of Homo gems, and before Rose Quartz could get to her location to save her, she was already shattered. Gruesomely, the Homo gems are revealed to have known about Rose Quartz's healing powers, leading them to burying the pieces of the crystal gems that they shattered in the dirt to ensure that Rose Quartz would never be able to even find them. The sludge monster was one of Rose Quartz's many soldiers during the war, and the reality is that even though Rose led her to her death, none of the crystal gems ever even gave her the respect of learning her name. Running out of options, Steven dashes into the air using his hydro pack and decides to head straight for the sludge monster's gemstone, summoning his bubble to make sure that he didn't accidentally suffocate himself from inside of her constructed body. Carefully moving around from inside of the sludge monster, Steven makes his way to her gemstone and strategically uses his healing speed to heal her before bubbling her, ensuring that she wouldn't be in any more pain. Because of their shared near-death experiences, Buck grows closer to his father, and the crystal gems, reflecting on everything that they've just been through, realizes that even in her corrupted state, the gem in control of the sludge monster was still a loyal crystal gem, one who decided to pin the iconic star symbol whenever she regained control over her monstrous form. Steven reminds the other crystal gems that even big messes can be cleaned up if you truly put in the effort, leading all of them to finally come into terms with how they chose to treat the vast majority of their allies during the gem war.
Forgive me.
The truth is that Steven Universe's political system felt like more of an afterthought because it was. This aspect of the show wasn't something that was really prioritized during its story, and that's alright. Different shows choose to focus on some aspects more than others, and while it's fun to discuss how the series would have turned out if the government did get involved, the fact that we have to constantly remind ourselves that they didn't proves that the series worked just fine without one. They're just crows. Excuse me, Pearl, but I'll have you know that we crows have the IQ of a 7-year-old. So yeah, we're pretty smart.
I knew it! Theory confirmed!
Steven Universe was pretty incredible, but how was your relationship with your father?
Who the starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
While having both of your parents can be considered to be a blessing in itself, the importance of having a decent father figure in our lives while growing up cannot be understated. And that's coming from someone who grew up without one for the majority of their life.
I can't stay here and humor you. I have to be there for my son.
You're late.
I feel like this is a hot take, but Greg was kind of a terrible dad. I'm guessing that the reason that most of us feel weird about calling Greg out for doing things like not sending Steven to school, not ever bringing him to a library, and not even having the decency to take him in for regular checkups is simply because it's clear that he was at least a loving father who was always trying his best. The man is immune to criticism because he has the infamous hat in the right place syndrome.
You messed with my head!
No, I didn't mean I just wanted to live with my son again.
Get out of here! Go on! Get the hell out of here!
Yeah, Greg might have been emotionally absent from Steven's life throughout the duration of the original series, but at least his heart was in the right place. Yeah, Greg might have chosen to keep Steven isolated from the outside world to such an extent that he never even met other members of his own family or hung out with other humans until he was 13, but at least his heart was in the right place. Yeah, Greg might have lied to Steven about having a broken leg for an entire day, resulting in him losing one of his most useful abilities for nearly 2 seasons, but at least his heart was in the right place.
Call the police.
Oh, I'm way ahead of you, Mr. Universe.
No!
Look, we're not only here to judge Greg's parenting during the original series, let's also take a closer look at the way that Greg chose to handle parenting during Steven Universe Future. Maybe it can be argued that he was reformed as a father after Steven managed to establish peace across the universe. Nope, no, he somehow got even worse.
Is this where our name comes from?
Yes, exactly.
You took it from a song?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Forget about being emotionally absent. Now he's just straight up telling our boy Steven that he was better off as a kid than his father was, which is still probably one of the craziest statements that anyone has ever said on the entire show.
Trust me, you're better off than I was.
What?
Everyone's trauma is real to them, and this isn't the tragic childhood Olympics or anything, but there's no way that Greg's childhood was comparable to anything that Steven had to go through on a bi-weekly basis.
My problem isn't that I'm a gem. My problem is I'm a universe.
He's out of line,
but he's right.
Parenting is one of the most complicated subjects to cover because it's all about perspective. I bet that some of you could genuinely convince me that Greg was a good father even after I've shown you how strongly I feel about the idea that he wasn't. Because that's called being human. We're constantly growing, evolving, and changing our perspectives.
I'm proud of you.
What? Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Believe it or not, but we actually got a ton of insight into the bizarre way that Greg chose to raise Steven during the series' official run of comics. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 35 not only gave us much needed insight into Greg's parenting style, but it also blessed us with more insight into Bismuth's deeply chaotic mind as well, when she accidentally creates one of the greatest threats that the citizens of Beat City has ever faced. The comic issue being set after Steven and the Crystal Gems leave the Earth in order for them to appeal to White Diamond on Homeworld, opens with Greg holding Cat Steven at the car wash when Mr. Fryman pulls up in his broken down van, hoping to get Greg to keep it from falling apart. Greg lets Mr. Fryman know that Pearl is usually the one who fixes his van when it gets torn down by gem activity, but she was currently off planet with Steven, and I'm sorry to break the flow of his comic so soon, but I just have to ask, what gem did that to Mr. Fryman's van? Huh? It's also incredibly surreal that the citizens of Beat City are now finally acknowledging the fact that gems exist. They usually just blissfully act like nothing is going on no matter how bad things got.
Sorry about that!
What?
Anyway, looking for the next best gem for the job, Greg introduces Mr. Fryman to Bismuth. Greg, deeply concerned with the ruthless way that Bismuth was handling Mr. Fryman's van, decides to give her a little bit of space while she worked her magic. The following day, when Mr. Fryman passes by the car wash to pick up his van, he notices that it looked different, to say the least. It turns out that Bismuth decided to add a fully functional laser light cannon to the vehicle, causing Mr. Fryman to look on the bright side by referencing the fact that he'd finally be able to defend himself from homeward handships, which is a lie. Bismuth doesn't correct him here either, but laser light cannons are useless against modern day handships. Bismuth, satisfied with her work on Mr. Fryman's van, decides to wander around the boardwalk with Cat Steven and Greg, in hopes of giving even more citizens of Beat City the means of defending themselves from future gem attacks. Despite Greg's protests, the team runs into Jenny, who lets Bismuth know that she needed help fixing her car's headlights. After talking about possible upgrades to her vehicle, Jenny lets Bismuth know that she wasn't exactly in favor of installing 2 laser light cannons to the front of her car, leading them to come into an agreement of installing a giant weaponized claw into the vehicle instead. Bismuth reveals that her new plan was to transform the citizens of Beat City, soon followed by every other human being on the planet, into the new army of the Crystal Gems. Greg mentions the fact that teenagers like Jenny shouldn't be brought into the Homeworld conflict because of a high level of risk, leading Bismuth to calling Greg out for allowing Steven to continue to fight alongside the other gems. Greg defends himself by telling Bismuth that Steven knows what he's getting himself into because he's been training, and that's just not how it works. Steven is 13 years old during this comic issue, so I think it's safe to say that he definitely does not know what he's getting himself into. But moving past Greg's awful reasoning for a moment, I actually really love Bismuth's idea of giving the citizens of Beat City the option to fight alongside the Crystal Gems. She isn't forcing anyone into anything, she's quite literally just giving anyone who's interested the option of gaining a means of defending themselves against the Homeworld invasion. Problem is, she keeps bringing up the town's state after the recent encounter with the Diamonds as her reasoning for coming to this conclusion, constantly claiming that the town was in a mess after everything that went down, and we know that this just isn't true. The Diamonds attacked the Crystal Gems near the temple and the cluster emerged near the barn, meaning that it also didn't affect Beat City, so what is Bismuth talking about? You saw the town, it's a mess after the Diamonds showed up. No, we saw the town, and even in this very comic issue, it looks perfectly fine.
You don't want to test me, girl. I'll pass every time.
Anyway, after Bismuth's argument with Greg over the ethics of allowing the citizens of Beat City to join in on the fight against Homeworld, she storms off in search of finding more people in need of mechanical help, leading Bismuth to introducing herself to Mr. Smiley, and he hilariously agrees to let her install rocket launchers around Funland. Alright, that actually makes sense.
Steven, you're banned from all the rides forever!
Several consecutive explosions in the center of town result in Bismuth learning from an extremely out-of-breath Greg that Mr. Fryman was accidentally firing high-powered rockets all over the boardwalk, putting all of the citizens of Beach City in mortal danger. Greg gets through to Bismuth after she realizes that the citizens of Beach City don't have any experience when it comes to actually handling powerful weapons, leading to her comparing her mindset to Homeworld's. It's worth reiterating that Bismuth wasn't forcing anyone to become soldiers. She was just giving them the option of joining in on the battle for the Earth, at a time when many of them were expressing just how frustrated they all were. But most of these comic issues are strictly only 24 pages long, so we don't have time for nuance.
Bismuth is so funny.
I don't know. Same joke twice?
Well, it'll be really funny if she does it a third time.
With a rampaging tank being driven by someone who's never been inside of a tank before, Bismuth rushes into action and absorbs the impact of the incoming missiles in hopes of reducing the damage done to the actual environment. She then heroically jumps in front of Mr. Fryman's new van, grabbing onto it in order for him to get enough time to escape the death trap. Attempting to end the rampage as quickly as possible, Bismuth decides to brutally suplex her hard work, putting an end to its short reign of terror. Greg and Bismuth would spend the following days repairing the damage done to Beach City before Bismuth would be called to Homeworld along with Lapis and Peridot as backup by a broken and dehydrated Watermelon Steven. Greg's parenting style during Steven Universe was formed as a result of his trauma during his childhood. He lied to Steven in order for them to spend more time together during the episode Dear Old Dad, instead of simply asking him to do so because Greg didn't want to become his parents. Nobody is perfect, not even parents, and while I think that it's reasonable for us to be able to criticize bad parenting, I can't in good conscience say that Greg wasn't truly trying to give Steven anything else other than the childhood that he wished he could have gotten himself. Did you know that one of Garnet's defining characteristics is the fact that she doesn't ask any questions?
Start with the letter N.
Okay, what next?
The letter O.
Cause I didn't, and I've been a fan of the series ever since it began. Rebecca Sugar also confirmed that this was completely intentional, while revealing a couple of really cool moments where this character trait was subtly implemented.
What am I?
No more questions.
Should we ask them what's going on?
I can't.
Similarly to how Pearl wasn't able to tell anyone about Pink Diamond's big secret, Garnet got her ability to ask questions taken away by Pink Diamond as well. Alright, I'm done with the Rose Squad slander. We did get clarification from Rebecca Sugar that Garnet formed a pact with Rose instead of her literally losing the ability to ask questions.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
It's not like making up rumors about Rose Squad. It's going to do much to hurt her reputation at this point anyway.
She's gone!
Unless, what if when Spinel hit Steven with a rejuvenator, she actually reset his gemstone to the point of Pink Diamond's consciousness being fully reawakened? This would explain why Steven only began to unlock his mother's destructive powers after the events of the movie. It's because Pink Diamond was trying to regain control over her body and wipe out all of her greatest enemies like Jasper and White Diamond. Is where this video would have gone if I didn't change my mindset on Pink Diamond. She surprisingly became one of my favorite characters on the entire show well after it ended. Yeah, the 25-year-old brain patch is real and it does wonders, let me tell you.
You know, I'm starting to think
Pink Diamond became so troubled by the fact that she permanently scarred Pink Pearl's face that she began to develop her healing powers while simultaneously suppressing her destructive ones. Bismuth and Peridot were also given phenomenally written redemption arcs, having their problematic views slowly being changed over time. But having less than half of a show's redemption arcs actually being good doesn't exactly spark joy, and a lot of you seem to agree with me on that. This gets even worse when you realize the shocking fact that most of the characters that have wronged Steven on the show never actually apologizes to him.
I'm sorry!
We don't do that here.
This doesn't even just apply to our boy Steven either. Apologies in general have come in extremely short supply on Steven Universe. Lapis never makes right with Peridot for destroying the barn among her other offenses before her redemption arc.
You're really here.
Hey.
What a sick joke!
Lars never makes right with Ronaldo for siding with his bullies before his redemption arc.
Whoa. What happened?
And you're supposed to be dead.
I got better?
And the Diamonds never make right with anyone for being the Diamonds. Before whatever the ending of Change Your Mind was supposed to be, it definitely wasn't a redemption arc, I can guarantee you that.
And if Pink hurt you, it was because I hurt her.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
We might as well settle this debate about Lassie's past right now while we're on the subject.
You wouldn't say that if you knew what other people say about you!
Are the cool kids even capable of being Ronaldo's bullies when you consider the undeniable fact that they were usually portrayed as being chill people? This is the question that has divided our community. Subscribe to join the Night Owls, by the way. Here's the truth. Despite the fact that the cool kids were definitely chill and laid back most of the time, they've also all been shown to happily indulge in other toxic activities like gossiping, which can be considered to be a form of bullying in itself.
This shirt is the funniest thing I've seen in my life.
How's this?
So bad. Your work is so naive. You really love your dad. It's funny.
You're all sick. Sick in the head.
Buck, Jenny, and Sour Cream all ruthlessly bullied Steven during the episode Shirt Club for loving his father. And then they all bullied his father for existing. Also, this is Lars we're talking about here. Other than the cool kids, which other group of characters on the show has Lars been shown to value the opinion of?
Hey, check out my shirt.
Oh, that snake is nasty.
Oh, yeah, I hate snakes. They don't have any arms.
I'd love to read all of your thoughts on this debate, but for now, getting back on track to the topic at hand, it's so bizarre that Pink Diamond literally ended up being the only member of the Great Diamond Authority that was given an actual redemption arc. But I felt like we never really had a positive Rose Quartz moment after Steven started to investigate her past. Well, not on the show anyway. Written by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 24 not only revealed the truth behind one of the most important locations on the entire series, but being set in the middle of season 5 between Letters to Lars and Can't Go Back, it also canonically became the last time that we'd ever see Rose Quartz in a positive light. The comic issue starts off with Pearl mopping the kitchen counter when she notices that Steven was looking troubled while flipping through Buddy's book. Hoping that Pearl would be able to navigate through the mysterious pages of the book better than himself, Steven explains to her that he was planning on surprising Connie by taking her to a new gem-related location, in order for them to celebrate her recent achievements at school. Pearl naturally agrees to help Steven but gets hit with a massive wave of nostalgia after recognizing one of the entries within Buddy's book. Pearl recalls the beautiful moment that she introduced Rose Quartz to the Lunar Blossom Garden, the exact same garden that the duo would find Garnet stumbling around in when Ruby and Sapphire fused for the second time. Steven, more than happy with the idea of taking Connie to the location that he learned about from Garnet's stories, decides to warp to the Lunar Blossom Garden with Pearl in advance to ensure that the area was still in order. Steven and Pearl would be greatly disappointed, however, after discovering the brutal fact that the entire garden became overgrown and disheveled a long time ago. Later that day, Steven confides in Garnet and Amethyst about the state of the Lunar Blossom Garden, causing all of them to warp to the mythical location in hopes of figuring out if there truly wasn't any way of saving the environment. Garnet, surveying the area, figures out that if they were able to carefully destroy the invasive species of vines that began growing over all of the lunar blossoms, they'd be able to restore the garden back to its former glory. Steven and Amethyst, excited at the idea of saving the garden for Connie and Pearl respectively, instantly leads them both into deciding to wage war against the vines. Amethyst springs into action first, but when she begins to erratically snap all of the vines using her whip, Garnet reminds her that if they weren't gentle, there wouldn't be a garden worth traveling to at all. After several hours of hard work, the team successfully managed to remove every single vine that was laced around the garden, but realizes that none of the lunar blossoms were blooming because the trees overhead also grew much taller over time. Garnet, using a rocket fist and Steven and Amethyst following her lead, causes them to swiftly destroy a few of the branches that were keeping the glow of the moonlight out of reach from the area, resulting in the complete restoration of a lunar blossom garden. Steven, unable to contain his excitement any longer, rushes over to Connie's house that night in order for him to sneak her over to the temple. Garnet and Amethyst, convincing Pearl that it'd be a great idea for all of them to tag along with Steven and Connie, causes the entire team to create a plethora of new memories that they'd never forget. Pearl, grateful for her caring teammates, decides to thank each of them personally, and Steven, thankful for having Connie by his side after the fight that happened earlier on in the season, congratulates her on her recent achievements at school before deciding to show his affection by placing a lunar blossom flower in her hair. Settling into the enchanting atmosphere of a lunar blossom garden, Amethyst decides to place a couple of lunar blossoms in Pearl's hair as well, just like Rose did for her all of those years ago. Pearl, making sure that Garnet and Amethyst weren't left out of the loop, lovingly decides to place a crown of lunar blossoms on top of both of their heads. Steven Universe was an incredibly unique show that made the decision to redeem the vast majority of its most heinous antagonists. And while I still think that it's normal for us to morally question this creative decision, it's also worth remembering that Rebecca Sugar has made it clear on several occasions that the show was created to teach children about the value of acceptance, compromise, and forgiveness. And in that regard, it's safe to say that the series definitely managed to accomplish its goals. I feel like overall, Steven Universe actually did a great job teaching us about the value of communication, but...
Onion's dad?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
I can't hear you!
Yeah, one really compelling theory states that Onion and his stepfather Yellowtail are simply speaking in a foreign language. That's only coming across as being gibberish because of the fact that the show is presented to us from Steven's perspective. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad theory by any means, and it does seem to fit a few puzzle pieces together nicely, but it still doesn't explain Onion and Yellowtail's other lingeringly weird character traits.
What?
If you don't mind, I have a theory of my own that does explain where Onion and his stepfather truly come from, backed by 4 huge pieces of evidence, of course. Exhibit A, Vidalia is actually a type of onion, a fact that we can't ignore. Exhibit B, Onion canonically has a birth tape, meaning that we can safely rule out any headcanons that he's some kind of gem hybrid like Steven. Exhibit C, sentient plant life created by Steven have been shown to evolve and branch off from their original form unnaturally fast, proven by there being an entire watermelon-based civilization and watermelon sharks all within a few months. Exhibit D, Yellowtail, Onion, and the Watermelon Stevens all communicate in the exact same way. Additionally, Vidalia and Sour Cream have both been shown to be able to understand this mysterious language, which leads me to conclude that, similarly to how Steven accidentally sparked the creation of a watermelon civilization, I'm thinking that Rose Quartz accidentally sparked the creation of the Onion Rose civilization, which over the course of thousands of years evolved into a few of the characters living in Beat City that we've known since the beginning of the series. This will not only explain why Onion and Yellowtail act so incredibly weird, but it would also explain why they share the exact same voice actor as the Pebbles on a Homeworld and the Watermelon Stevens on Earth. That voice actor being none other than Zach Callison, also known as being the voice actor for Steven himself. It's because the Watermelon Stevens, the Pebbles, and Onion are literally all related to Steven.
Hey! That's pretty good.
We can debate the plausibility of my theory in the comments section, but for now, getting back on track to the topic at hand. Why was communication more valued than discipline on Steven Universe? I mean, children never got punished for their bad behaviors on the show, at least not when it would actually be beneficial.
Priceless. There are some things money can't buy.
Steven himself was practically begging Greg to enforce some law and order into his life when he crashed the van. But Onion was arguably in an even worse position. Both of his parents let him do basically anything that he wanted to without any repercussions, leading to him breaking into buildings and engaging in a barrage of other questionable activities. But would you be shocked to find out that Onion's worst offense wasn't actually featured on the show? Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 22 reviewed the results of Yellowtail and Vidalia's incredibly lax parenting style, while also showing us the consequences of his parenting style on Onion's young mind. The comic issue being set after the events of Storm in the Room opens with our boy Steven deep in thought when Amethyst uncharacteristically begins to clean the surrounding area. It's revealed that Amethyst was excitedly tidying up the temple in preparation for a visit from Vidalia and Onion. Amethyst explains to Steven that she was hoping this dinner party would help both of them cope with awareness of a recent adventure in space. But before Steven would get the chance to object to Amethyst's logic, Vidalia and Onion would already be standing at their front door. Welcoming the crystal gems back to Earth, Vidalia brings a painting of Amethyst's new form, and Onion brings out of Steven created from the pieces of his leftover lunch. So the dinner party begins with Amethyst admitting that Pearl was the one who prepared all of her food, but Vidalia would soon find out that Amethyst also decided to add a hint of fire salt to her dish. Hilariously enough, both Vidalia and Onion are revealed to love the taste and side effects of the fire salt, leading to Vidalia asking Amethyst to sprinkle a little bit more over her food. After a night of Amethyst having the time of her life with Vidalia, and Steven struggling to keep a smile on his face while playing video games with Onion, the comic issue would take a dark turn. Amethyst decides to show Vidalia around her room, leading to Onion sneaking inside of a temple for the first time while dragging Steven along with him for the ride. While Amethyst attempts to find the best pile of trash to stick Vidalia's painting into, Steven, being led by Onion's mischievous mind, face plants off of Amethyst's trampoline. Onion, being in Amethyst's room for no longer than a minute, would decide to dive headfirst into a tiny puddle, leading Steven to reluctantly chasing after him. Realizing that they mistakenly found themselves in Pearl's room, Steven begs Onion to leave the temple with him, but almost as if being led by a greater purpose, Onion would decide to dive into another pool of water instead. A pool of water that led Onion directly to the burning room. Steven, hurriedly following Onion into the burning room, causes him to nearly have a heart attack when he notices that Onion was moments away from releasing one of the bubble gems. In a desperate attempt to keep Onion from endangering the lives of everyone inside of the temple, Steven begs him to stop, and surprisingly, without even thinking, Onion listens to him. We learn that Onion was simply trying to cheer Steven up using the exact same method that he uses to cheer himself up as well, being putting himself in mortal danger. With Steven's approval, Onion climbs up into Rose's room, leading to the duo finding common ground and genuinely enjoying each other's company for the rest of the evening. Steven and Amethyst, thankful for having one of the most refreshing dinners of their lives, wave goodbye to their guests. Onion using danger to keep himself sane is one thing, but like I mentioned earlier, he wasn't the only victim of lax parenting. Not even close. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 16 not only showed us the results of passive parenting on the minds of developing teenagers, but it also provided us with more proof as to why Amethyst is the most mature crystal gem. The comic issue being set after the events of Know Your Fusion opens with Steven and Amethyst going to Fish Stew Pizza in order for them to enjoy a pizza-themed breakfast. Jenny, excited to share the music from her favorite band with new people, lets Steven and Amethyst listen to one of their newest songs, causing both of them to instantly become fans. Jenny then further explains that she was planning on going to the band's house show later that night before her father Kofi decides to jump into the conversation, and reminds Jenny that her hands would be needed to help the business prepare for its busiest day. Jenny, feeling defeated, would get the devious idea of sneaking out of Fish to Peter to attend the party anyway because of Kiki of all people. Steven worries that if the sisters were caught sneaking out, they'd both get in trouble, but Jenny reassures him that their father was all bark and no bite. So, not even the parents who were portrayed as being strict on the show had the willpower to consistently reinforce their own rules. Later that evening, the rebellious sisters would meet up with Steven and Amethyst, leading all of them to heading out of Beat City and making their way to the house show. With Kiki guiding the group using her phone's navigational system, they'd find themselves literally driving in circles for hours, causing all of them to start panicking. Eventually, Kiki's phone would manage to convince the group to travel down a dark and abandoned route, which mysteriously leads them to getting a flat tire soon after. Desperate for them to get out of this dangerous situation in one piece, Jenny quickly comes up with the idea of pushing her car the rest of the way to the party, but they'd soon come to realize that this wasn't the most realistic idea. Amethyst then attempts to push the car herself while harnessing the power of her purple puma form, but this proves to be just as ineffective as Jenny's plan. As the minutes passing turned into even more hours, the Peter sisters would come to terms with calling their father for help, and Steven would come to terms with calling his father for help, but neither of them would have the luxury of holding onto their phones for much longer. A mysterious shadowy figure moving at superhuman speeds leaps out of the bushes and snatches Steven and Kiki's phones, causing the entire group to start fearing for their lives. Steven and Amethyst, having plenty of experience dealing with corrupted gems, prepare themselves for the worst, while Kiki begs Jenny to call Kofi using her phone before the shadowy figure made another move. Jenny, reasonably being fearful of having another awkward conversation with her father, decides to call Buck and Sour Cream instead, but because of the fact that they were both already at the party, this call would prove to be a complete waste of time. When the shadowy figure sounds an unspeakably loud roar from behind the bushes, Amethyst advises Jenny that there are times when even the fun sister should take situations seriously, especially when the lives of their loved ones are on the line. Steven and Amethyst form Smoky Quartz in order for them to gain the physical strength needed to take on their mysterious pursuer, while Jenny and Kiki gain the emotional strength needed to call their father for help. Using their heightened senses, Smoky Quartz launches their yo-yo into the bushes directly at the pursuer, but this would prove to be a huge mistake. After Smoky Quartz failed to remedy the concerning situation, Jenny and Kiki would contact their father, but instead of scolding his daughters, the thought of losing both of them forever causes Kofi to make his way to their location as soon as possible. Lion being revealed to be the shadowy figure leads Smoky Quartz to finally being able to let their guard down and breathe a sigh of relief. Jenny and Kiki would be reunited with Steven and Amethyst after mustering up the courage to investigate the bushes, and within a few minutes, all of them would be reunited with Greg and Kofi as well. With help from Amethyst, Greg manages to quickly repair Jenny's car, and after grounding his daughters for a month, Kofi makes sure to let both of them know that he'd be completely fine with letting them attend any and every party that they wanted to from now on. Way to stand your ground, man. The majority of the youth living in Beat City were born into families that gave them unlimited amounts of freedom. Discipline and punishment are just as important as communication and freedom when it comes to effective parenting though. And the fact that the show made sure to show us some of the horrible side effects of a childhood void of punishment proves that the series at least took this concept into consideration. One of the most upsetting errors in Steven Universe history ironically took place after the season 1 finale, because this was when Garnet's iconic song Stronger Than You landed on the internet.
You what?
The Undertale parody of Stronger Than You became so popular that millions of fans of the games genuinely began to think that the Steven Universe version was the parody. And it didn't really help that both of these songs were released on YouTube at around the same time to fan bases that were made up of mostly young children, including myself. You also have to take into consideration the insane fact that the Undertale versions of the song gained and still has more views than the Steven Universe version. And yes, I did mean to say Undertale versions there.
This is the worst!
So naturally, the fanbases were at war for a couple of months in the comment sections of all of these videos, with some people taking it more seriously than others. Way more seriously.
I'm going to kill you.
Calm down, son. It's just a drawing.
Despite your thoughts on this odd piece of history, I'm bringing all of this up now to say that while Stronger Than You is still one of my favorite songs on the entire show, we've come such a long way since then that it's actually only my 5th favorite song to come out of the series. Climbing up the list, Full Disclosure being the song that made its debut directly after Stronger Than You was honestly much more impactful, and I'm not sure if this is a hot take at the moment, but I'm sure I'm about to find out. Don't get me wrong, both of these songs were packed to the brim with emotion and deeper meaning for the Crystal Gems as a team, but one of them simply managed to pull this off much more effectively than the other. While Stronger Than You symbolized the beginning of a new era for Ruby and Sapphire's relationship within Garnet, Full Disclosure symbolized the ending of an era for Steven. This song was our boy accepting his responsibilities as a Crystal Gem, and learning that if he didn't start taking his journey seriously, the lives of everyone on the planet, especially those that he cares about most, would be put in grave danger.
Is something wrong? Did I do something wrong?
Next up, my 3rd favorite song being Here Comes a Thought seriously needs no explanation, so I'm not going to give you one. Pearl's character arc through the series was nothing short of breathtaking, but I especially loved it when all of her trauma and feelings of abandonment came to the forefront during Mr. Greg. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. It's Over Isn't It is my 2nd favorite Steven Universe song. The best part about rewatching the show is experiencing how different episodes like Rose's Scabbard and Mr. Greg feel, with the added context of Pearl's history with Rose Quartz and by extension Pink Diamond of course. I still had chills while listening to It's Over Isn't It for the first time, but I was feeling something more after my 100th time.
I'm sorry you had to be around me.
Dad!
What can I say, Garnet's songs are peak, and that's why True Kinda Love became my new favorite Steven Universe song. It's genuinely perfect, from the lyrics to the music. My heart melts every time that the song gets to Steven's little section too. You know the I'll do the hardest part with you.
What?
Y'all better not make fun of my singing. That was like my 20th take. My $50 mic doesn't have a pop filter, okay? I'm trying my best here.
This is my own private domicile and I will not be harassed!
I can almost guarantee that all of your top 5 lists has a high likelihood of looking a little bit different when compared to mine. Because there's hardly any songs to come out of a series that could even be considered average. But what if I told you that there's a Steven Universe song which was released years ago and yet no one's ever even heard it? Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 21 not only featured the first time that we'd ever see Peridot playing an instrument on her own, but as a byproduct of this, it also canonically blesses with Peridot's second song in the series. The comic issue being set after the traumatizing events of Raising the Barn opens with Peridot introducing one of her favorite episodes of Campaigning Hearts to Steven and Pumpkin. Peridot explains that the episode resonated with her because it premiered with one of the most relatable songs in the series. The song in question, titled Alienated, was performed by Percy to express his feelings of grief and isolation from the other campers during the annual camp talent show. Percy's situation being incredibly similar to everything that Peridot went through on Earth during her redemption arc causes her to feel even more attached to Alienated, especially after rewatching the entire arc with her friends. This leads our girl Peridot to singing the song over and over again with Pumpkin while Steven was sound asleep. With Steven and Pumpkin's blessings, Peridot continues to sing Alienated over the course of the entire morning. Eventually, Steven, being thoughtful, offers to teach Peridot how to play an instrument that would complement her newly found passion for singing. Steven and Peridot grabbing onto a sheet of paper and making their way upstairs in order for them to write down the chords to the song Alienated leads both of them to realizing fairly quickly that they'd need the help of someone with a bit more musical experience if they were hoping on actually being successful with their ambitious plans. Naturally, Steven comes up with the idea of asking his father Greg, also known as a flightless human, to help them decipher all of the chords to the song Alienated. After Peridot helps Steven to finish packing his cheeseburger backpack with all of the essential items that they need during their journey, the duo, filled with hope, leaves the temple in order for them to make their way to the car wash. Greg, coincidentally taking some time off to practice playing his guitar, warmly greets Steven and Peridot while gladly accepting their pleas for help. Without wasting any time, Greg plays the cassette tape featuring Alienated on his TV and flawlessly continues scripting on the chord sheet exactly where Steven left off. Steven, mesmerized by Greg's seemingly endless amounts of musical knowledge, and the team focused on finishing the chords to Alienated as accurately as possible, decides to place Peridot on TV duty. After pouring all of their passion and effort into scripting for hours, Greg and Steven would proudly surprise Peridot with the completed chords to the song Alienated, causing her to awkwardly realize that she didn't know how to read a chord sheet. Greg, seeing a ton of untapped musical potential within Peridot, awards her with her very own guitar before moving forward with teaching her how to read chord sheets, with Steven assisting them during the process. Peridot, enchanted by the realization that it would soon be possible for her to be able to fully perform her favorite song, tries her best to learn how to play her new guitar by following Greg's and Steven's instructions, but this leads to disaster. Greg hands over a spare guitar pick to Peridot after her fingers begins getting sore from pressing against her new guitar strings. But not only would this gesture not help Peridot in the slightest, when Steven explains that they haven't even gotten halfway through her first lesson yet, she'd quit playing an instrument altogether. Greg intriguingly reveals that Steven also shared Peridot's deep frustration when it came to learning to play an instrument. Steven, seeing his younger self within Peridot, comforts her, and the duo would find common ground before deciding to head back to the temple for the rest of the day. That night, Peridot, being unable to fall asleep or simulate falling asleep, grabs her tablet and obsessively begins to listen to Alienated over and over again until she'd gained the inspiration needed to continue pursuing her dreams. Peridot, filled with a deep and powerful motivation, instantly wakes up Steven before letting him know that she was interested in continuing her guitar lessons with Greg. The following morning, Peridot and Steven, feeling rejuvenated, rushes to Greg and decide to pick up exactly where they all left off during in the previous session, leading to Peridot having the exact same reaction. After several hours of pain, Peridot would finally be able to confidently sing the first few lines to the song Alienated while simultaneously playing the correct notes with her guitar. And although she'd be disappointed with her slow progress, Greg and Steven would make sure that Peridot knew just how admirable her progress has been so far. Steven Universe changed my life for the better in so many ways with its phenomenal music. I've listened to some of the show's songs hundreds of times at this point, and I'm thankful that I don't feel alone on that decision anymore. Alright, let's play a game. You have 3 lives. You lose one of your lives every time you laugh or smile, and if you lose all 3 of your lives before this video ends, then you have to click off and never come back. I'm not trying to cultivate a community of losers here, okay? Keep it together.
Just go in the ocean, bro.
Like a fish.
What's with you guys and making me pee outside?
Well, I have fun doing it.
There are a ton of great picks for the best gem on Steven Universe, but for me, Amethyst has always been #1. I've always just loved her entire vibe.
I told him to say I love you. I love you.
That's so sweet. I love you too.
She's lost so much over the course of her series.
That was awesome. No! Mi torta!
She's also had to suffer through some of the most painful experiences that you could possibly imagine.
I don't even want to know what happened to you.
I got hit by an airplane.
Not to mention her several close encounters with death itself.
They're gonna put me in the ground! Oh, no! Those flowers are lovely!
Amethyst's great. I mean, for one, she's incredibly reliable.
This time, let's build a moat. I could be the crocodile! Jazz hands.
No.
Why not?
You always say you'll be the crocodile, but you never commit.
She's also the type of gem who'll try her best to cheer you up when you're feeling down.
Yo, Steven. Why are you standing there all sad like that?
But that's enough about Amethyst. I'm here to make sure that you lose all of your lives, so let's...
Quick, you have to pretend to be my mom to Connie's mom.
Hello, this is Mom Universe.
Not.
Yes, the children are playing swords. Sorry, playing with swords.
Waste.
They're bleeding. Oh no, they are dead. Don't call again.
Any more time.
Sorry, I panicked.
How about we move on to Garnet, the self-proclaimed funniest character on the entire show.
Wow, Garnet, that was the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Garnet, master of comedy.
Or is she?
All comedy is derived from fear.
Oh, you are too much.
Maybe Garnet is just always afraid, which would low-key line up with some of the traits that we've seen from her counterparts.
But she's so wonderful and spontaneous. I have no idea what she could... Why would she be a cowboy?
But at the same time, Garnet is without a doubt one of the most hardcore and stoic gems on the show.
Criminy, are you okay? That coffee was really hot.
I drink coffee for breakfast.
Incredibly intense character.
You can tell Steven about all the beautiful things you wrote to me in your missive.
I didn't write that.
Honestly, if you're still watching this video with more than 1 life left, then I'm going to need to bust out my A game.
Blink if this means you love me. He loves me!
Steven Universe has always been exceptionally great at making seemingly meaningless gags become relevant again in the most hilarious ways.
Thank you, Steven.
No prob, Bob.
It's Lapis, Bob.
These moments are usually always related to Lapis and Peridot for some reason, fool.
Peridot? Are you gonna be okay?
I'm a traitorous clod! Traitorous clod!
No! I know. But wait, you guys have to see the inside. Lapis, fly us in!
No.
When it came to the Homo gems, Peridot was definitely given most of the highlights.
Think like a monster.
I mean, there's a reason why she's considered to be the most lovable crystal gem.
Say we'll do it together and it's gonna be great!
We're gonna do it together and it's gonna be great!
Liar!
The truth is, I never really agreed with the idea that Garnet was the funniest gem on Steven Universe.
Will you help me into my birthday suit?
Yeah! You better run!
Steven is, without a doubt, my pick for the funniest gem in the series, which is only natural, right?
funny! I'm bald!
There were a ton of top-tier jokes made about Steven's very existence as being the first human-gem hybrid. From jokes being made out of the fact that he wasn't sent to school.
I told my parents you have a nuclear family.
Nuclear? Sure, they make stuff blow up sometimes, but that's because they're magic, not radioactive.
To jokes being made whenever his human life and gem life cross paths in Beat City.
Large pizza, please. Extra fishy.
You must be hungry.
I'm ordering for 2.
Steven's pregnant?
I'm almost out of clips.
Human screams are my favorite of the Earth's delights. I want to hear the human screams forever.
Okay, that's kind of troubling.
Please laugh.
I think I made one eye bigger than the other.
I was going for a feeling.
Honestly, I can't even draw a circle.
Okay, Garnet, you just drew yourself.
I like me.
Wow, if you're seriously still in the game, then I guess we could check out the funniest official comic issue together, where the Shorty Squad goes to the annual Beat City Renaissance Fair. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself, Steven Universe issue number 4 not only blessed us with one of the most hardcore adventures featuring the residents of Beat City, but it also gave us the story of how Peridot got banned from Beat City's Renaissance Fair forever. The comic issue being set after the Shorty Squad heated encounter with Jasper and the lighthearted events of a kindergarten kid opens with Amethyst, Peridot and Steven taking a break by visiting Beat City's annual Renaissance Fair. The trio would manage to enter the venue after basically getting scammed by the gatekeeper, who charges Steven and Amethyst the full price of admission while simultaneously only charging Peridot the price of a child. Peridot, wondering why humanity would celebrate a point in time when they were far less efficient, gets 2 answers from each of her companions. Steven explains that sometimes it's just fun to experience nostalgia, and Amethyst literally says historic meets best meets. Mr. Smiley, attempting to cheer Peridot up, manages to push her into getting a face painting fairly quickly, and that's great. But what kind of messed up Diamond Authority insignia is that? Why is Blue Diamond on top? Actually, never mind, that's low-key a hierarchy that I can get behind. Peridot feeling insulted by Steven and Amethyst's predictable reaction to a freshly painted face, wanders off on her own and decides to make herself feel at home inside of Lady Hatchet's weaponry, which leads to her getting her hands on an actual weapon, before it gets instantly replaced by a less deadly version. After the Shorty Squad is reunited, they decide to make their way to the highly praised jousting tournament. The first round, set up by none other than Jamie, begins with Lady Hatchet facing off against the tournament's undefeated champion, Surrender. Peridot, still bitter about losing her weapon earlier to Lady Hatchet, shares during her brutal defeat at the hands of Surrender, followed by the consecutive defeats of every other adult applicant from Beat City, leaving only the children behind to defend the name of their parents. Within a few seconds, Onion would single-handedly put an end to Surrender's long reign of terror, causing our girl Peridot to get inspired by the idea of his smaller size giving him some kind of advantage. Naturally, Peridot decides to be the next in line to joust against Surrender himself, leading her into discovering the world-shattering fact that all of the matches that included children were rigged. Also, it's not that kind of jousting tournament, Amethyst. Peridot, tired of being treated differently for being small, challenges Surrender to a rematch, after finally coming to terms with being adorable. So the controversial rematch begins with Surrender making the decision to forfeit the round and quit being a knight altogether, because of the extreme weirdness of his new reality finally setting in. But at the same time, Peridot, enacting a nasty plot, suddenly falls off of her horse, pretending to have been jousted by Surrender without mercy. Taking advantage of Surrender's kindness, Peridot waits for him to get close to her, slaps his nose as hard as possible, and then gets banned from Beat City's annual Renaissance Fair forever. Congratulations, bud, you made it to the end of my game without losing, which means you're a buzzkill. You won, but at what cost? You ever wonder what would have happened if Steven actually got sent to school? Well, let's find out. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself and written by Ian Jones Corty, Steven Universe Too Cool for School explored the various consequences that would have naturally occurred as a result of Steven getting enrolled in a public school, which includes him accidentally putting his classmates in harm's way multiple times a day, and on some occasions being the one causing the harm. The comic issue opens with our boy Steven learning that he'd be on his own for the day, since the crystal gems would be far too busy exercising, training, and sleeping, all in preparation for the team to take on a dangerous mission later that night. Steven, suffering from a critical case of boredom, decides to hop on Lion's back, hoping that his furry friend would be able to take him to somewhere more exciting. Connie, waiting for the bus in order for her to get to school, bumps into Steven, who sneakily and effortlessly tricks her into bringing him along for the ride. So, thinking quickly under pressure, Connie introduces Steven to her class as a contribution for show and tell, while going on to explain that he was one of the members of the Crystal Gems and as such possessed a wide assortment of magical abilities. Connie, freezing up at the thought of her class doubting Steven's odd family heritage, causes both of them to get asked to return to their seats by the class's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Lesnar. A few of Steven's new classmates opening up to him ask if it'd be okay if he brought the rest of the Crystal Gems to school as well next time, before the rest of the class would begin to make fun of his unbelievable existence. Even Mrs. Lesnar gets in on the insane harassment by claiming that Steven was making everything up about magic being real. Yeah, I have a question. What kind of teacher doesn't follow along with the news? She didn't hear about the massive eyeball from space that exploded all over one of the nearest cities to the school. She never heard about the multiple locations all over the planet that are literally covered in proof of extraterrestrial life. Alright. The situation in the school gets even more anger-inducing because Steven, reasonably choosing not to back down from justifying himself, gets warned by Mrs. Lesnar that if he didn't stop disrupting her classroom, then he'd get sent to the principal's office. She literally says this while some of her students begin to take their harassment further by throwing erasers and paper balls at Steven's head, by the way, but she somehow doesn't see any of that. Wow, this does feel like a real school. Steven, feeling threatened, does the unthinkable and accidentally activates his bubble, causing Mrs. Lesnar along with all of her students to get flinged in every direction. Mrs. Lesnar, somehow not having any follow-up questions after witnessing irrefutable evidence that magic exists, sends both of her jambirds to the principal's office because of a supernatural assault in her classroom. Greg, arriving at the school after being called in because of his son's accidental outburst, gets warned by Principal Sandoval, who does ominously believe in magic, that if Steven didn't attend school throughout the rest of the year and instead chose to continue going out on missions with the Crystal Gems, then he could grow up to become completely disheveled and broken. Steven, determined to develop a bond with his new classmates and repair his already damaged relationship with Connie, makes the daunting decision to stay in school. The Jambirds, heading to the cafeteria for lunch, slowly let their guard down and actually start to have fun again, while Connie explains to Steven how each of her school cliques worked. Steven, hoping on finding his people, instantly sits next to the Junior Safety Patrol, leading Connie to reluctantly follow his lead. The patrol mentions to Steven that they were craving a healthier alternative to the food that the cafeteria offered, leading our boy Steven to crafting a brand new dish called taco salad for them to enjoy and the other students to begin craving. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when I first read this comic, I literally thought that Steven just went outside and grabbed a handful of dirt and leaves for these kids. After lunch, the Jambirds move into the next class, prepare themselves for the gym, which also meant a heated game of dodgeball. Within seconds, most of the class would fall victim to Steven and Connie's horrifyingly effective teamwork, because of the fact that they both entered the match with real combat training. Later that night, Steven boasts about his exciting day at school to the other Crystal Gems while they were in the middle of finally beginning the mission that we were all preparing for earlier that day, which is revealed to be uncovering the location of a powerful slime-based gem monster called a mollusk in order for them to stop it from growing. While in the middle of expressing his love for school, Steven quite literally stumbles upon the mollusk that they were hunting, causing the Crystal Gems to jump into action and start tearing it to shreds. Pearl allows Steven to take a shot from the battlefield in order for him to hopefully be able to impress Miss Lesnar during his contribution for show and tell. The following day at school, Steven somehow finishes his test earlier than all of his peers, and as a result of this is given the chance to present an item of his choice in front of the entire class. The comic issue would take a dark turn, however, when Steven realizes that he somehow lost his shell, followed by every other student in his class noticing that some of the items also began to go missing, including Mrs. Lesnar's chair. After finding a large trail of mollusk slime heading down the hall, Stephen and Connie begin to get increasingly more concerned for the safety of everyone in the school, leading them to convincing Mrs. Lesnar into allowing them to investigate the area. Every other student in the Jambert's class, all having one of their items missing, pursue Stephen and Connie in hopes of getting their hands on the hall pass that they were temporarily given from Mrs. Lesnar. The coach, running at full speed towards the gymnasium, lets Stephen and Connie know that the Junior Safety Patrol successfully cornered a monster inside of the room. This leads to everyone from the Jambert's class gathering around the entrance of the gymnasium in order for them to catch a glimpse of their first gem monster. Stephen attempts to call for backup but loses his phone instead to his new group of friends who were still determined to uphold middle school law. The Jamberts, running out of time, causes Connie to dash inside of the gymnasium and take a stand against the mollusk on her own by utilizing her new dodgeball skills. While the entire school was being distracted by Connie's bravery, Stephen uses the opportunity to retrieve his phone and make a quick call to his father. But this would prove to be a huge waste of time. The Junior Safety Patrol, motivated by Connie, decides to completely open the doors to the gym, allowing every willing student to fight alongside her in the most intense dodgeball match ever. While his classmates were in the middle of fighting for their lives, Stephen calls for Big Donuts and manages to convince Lars into forwarding his message of distress to the rest of the crystal gems. Without even thinking, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, terrified with the idea of Stephen along with a group of humans facing off against a mollusk on their own, leap into action and hurriedly make their way towards the school. The Jamberts learn that one of the mollusk's greatest weaknesses was bizarrely the school's very own cafeteria food, and decide to use this knowledge to their advantage until it starts to backfire on all of them hard, literally. Just when all hope for the students seemed lost, Stephen's backup would finally make the epic debut inside of the school. Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl methodically work together in order for them to quickly take down the elusive target once and for all, but their hard work would be proved to be completely in vain. That is, until they decide to ask everyone nearby to evacuate the building in order for them to stop holding back. After poofing and bubbling the second mollusk, the crystal gems let out a sigh of relief before realizing that schools weren't built to be able to handle fully fledged gem battles. This hilariously leads to the Jamberts, the crystal gems, and Greg having a meeting with Principal Sandoval in what's left of her office about Stephen and Connie's future at the school. The Jamberts, in the process of getting suspended indefinitely by Principal Sandoval, get saved by Mrs. Lesnar, who shocks everyone in the room with the extraordinary results of the exam that Stephen and Connie completed earlier. Pearl proudly explains that Stephen didn't need to go to school in order for him to have a successful life, proven by his high test score, with the condition of ensuring that Stephen, Greg, and the crystal gems never set foot inside of the building again because of the extreme level of danger that they attract. Connie is allowed to continue going to school. The Jamberts meeting up with the Junior Safety Patrol during summer vacation would have one of their lives changed forever when Connie is chosen to become the new leader of the team because of her unbelievable bravery during the mollusk battle, of course. After returning to school, Connie is not only celebrated as a hero by Mrs. Lesnar and her class, but she also got to return to school after making a host of unforgettable new memories. You ever wonder what Homeworld's most powerful piece of technology looked like? Well, let's find out. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself and written by Tyler Pepper. Wait, what? Steven Universe Anti-Gravity not only revealed one of Homeworld's oldest secrets, but it also forced the crystal gems into tackling one of their most dangerous adventures yet, in order for them to fix one of Garnet's most recent mistakes.
Oh no!
The comic issue opens with Steven teaching Amethyst how to flip a pancake when it mysteriously starts flipping itself. Ronaldo interrupting the crystal gems' breakfast leads Garnet to slamming the door in his face, before Steven, feeling bad for the guy, would allow him to report on his deeply concerning new findings. Ronaldo explains that he actually managed to make contact with an extraterrestrial force, at a moment when his brother PD was expressing his doubt in researching the supernatural. Similarly to the crystal gems' floating pancake incident at breakfast, Ronaldo and PD in the middle of an argument would also experience the return of the exact same mollusk malevolent old force on the planet. This irrefutable evidence led Ronaldo into deciding to rush through the streets of Beat City in hopes of warning all of his fellow residents about the incoming invasion. All of his efforts would prove to be completely in vain though, as the gravity in the surrounding area already began to fluctuate to life-threatening levels. Pearl, believing Ronaldo's story to be a little bit too sensational, kicks him outside of the house despite Steven's wishes. This leads the crystal gems to seeing proof of all of Ronaldo's claims with their very own eyes as he starts to float off into the sky without any warning. Pearl, worried that Steven's floating abilities and lack of experience with adjusting his own gravity would be cancelled out by the incredible power of this malevolent force, locks him inside of the house and decides that it'd be a better idea to let the other gems take care of saving Ronaldo. Steven, unlocking the gems' ability to subtly manipulate their own gravity at the thought of costing Ronaldo his life, dashes outside and orders Garnet to throw him into the sky before it was too late. Within a few seconds of carefully adjusting his flight trajectory, Steven meets up with Ronaldo in the sky and uses the mastery over his new power to drag him back down to Earth. The crystal gems use all of their strength to ensure that Ronaldo didn't begin to float off into space again, but would be met with a huge amount of resistance from their uninvited guest. Worried about the origin of this troublesome new gravity anomaly and its potentially disastrous effects on the other citizens of Beat City, the crystal gems carry Ronaldo back to Beat City Walk Fries. Ronaldo, starting up another heated argument with PD over his abrupt return to the planet, leads Steven to interrupting them in order for him to warn both of the brothers about the dark reality of alien anomalies. The crystal gems, noticing Steven's emotional outbursts at Ronaldo and PD inside of Beat City Walk Fries, leads them to sitting down with him in order for the team to gather all of their thoughts before moving any further with their investigation. Steven explains that the combination of learning about the ruthlessness of the other gems on Homeworld and the escalation in stakes of the missions on Earth began to discourage him. With the weight of the world now literally being on the shoulders of the crystal gems, they'd set out to bubble and ground everyone and everything that was directly affected by the gravity anomaly. Steven, being the voice of reason in the midst of chaos, warns all of the citizens of Beat City to stay indoors until his team identified the origin of their new problem and figured out a way to put an end to it. Naturally, Garnet and Pearl, being the most experienced with gem technology, theorized that a powerful Homeworld satellite called a Death Throw of Obsolence seemed to be the most likely culprit behind the crisis in Beat City. After a few minutes of playing around with Lion, Steven would manage to convince his furry friend to warp himself along with the other gems to the moon base again in order for them to confirm their troubling hypothesis. The crystal gems, not wasting any time, make their way to the highest point of the moon base and learn that Garnet smashing the control panel in response to Peridot earlier during season 2 was the reason behind the satellite's violent rampage on their home. Pearl explains that these types of ancient Homeworld satellites were distributed to targeted planets during invasions to serve as a means of recovering both organic and non-organic samples from their surfaces. Back in Beat City, Ronaldo, being unable to let go of his belief that he was the cause behind the gravity anomalies, almost leads him to losing his brother forever. With the truth behind the gravity anomalies being revealed, the crystal gems quickly make their way back to the ground floor of the moon base in order for them to convince Lion to warp them closer to the rogue satellite, but they'd soon come to realize that they were completely on their own from here on out. Garnet becomes the first crystal gem to successfully make the jump from the moon base to the satellite and gives the rest of her team the green light to follow her lead. Amethyst and Pearl decide that it'd be appropriate to form the original giant woman herself, Opal, in order for them to gain the strength needed to accurately throw Steven into Garnet's arms and make the jump across the daunting gap herself. Opal gets absolutely decked in the chin by the malfunctioning satellite, leading to all of the crystal gems taking a short break in the vacuum of outer space in order for them to laugh at the absurdity of their current mission while getting themselves ready to venture deep into the unknown. After the crystal gems reach the satellite's control panel, Garnet, expecting to fix a mistake by using the exact same method that created their predicament in the first place, causes Pearl to step in and take the lead by running a system diagnostic on the ancient computer. Within a few minutes, the crystal gems learned that one of the other reasons why the old system began to recently malfunction, besides Garnet losing a temper at the moon base, was because of the fact that whichever gem was previously inside of the structure left a ridiculous amount of tabs open for thousands of years. Pearl, confident that she could single-handedly take care of this technical issue, leads the other crystal gems into deciding to take advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of exploring an abandoned Homeworld satellite. Amethyst, rushing upstairs wishes to claim the satellite's top floor for herself leads Steven and Garnet to being left with the task of exploring the most dangerous section of the structure. Steven becomes reasonably more concerned after learning that the satellite's warp core was already overheating, but Garnet calms his nerves by reminding him that after Pearl was done with her work on the ground floor, then the core would start to cool down again. The duo, being quite literally at the top of the world, decide to take a moment to reflect on the full extent of the responsibilities that they were both tasked with as being members of the Crystal Gems. Garnet explains that when she first joined the team back during the very beginning of the rebellion, all she cared about was getting strong enough to be able to protect the planet from the Homeworld invasion. But Rose Quartz made sure to remind her that while working hard was important, feeling good was important too. Amethyst, hoping to share her findings on the top floor with the other Crystal Gems, excitedly makes her way to Steven and Garnet in order for her to ask them to follow her to the room, but Garnet would ominously decide to stay behind and allow Steven to go on ahead while advising him to be careful. Steven becomes enchanted by the room that is revealed to have been filled with a ton of glowing gem-based tech, but within a matter of seconds, his enchantment would be completely transformed into pure fear when Amethyst accidentally unleashes the structure's deadly pulsar waves on Beat City. Things go from bad to worse when the entire satellite starts to emit a sound disruption so concentrated that it begins to terrifyingly tear every nearby gem-based material to shreds. But before it gets powerful enough to seriously damage any of the Crystal Gems' gemstones, it shut itself off just as abruptly as it began. This would only be the beginning of the team's problems with a malfunctioning satellite though, because somehow, even with its main server being shattered earlier by the sound disruption, the structure was still fully operational and moments away from roasting everyone in Beat City alive with its boiling hot pulsar waves. PD and Ronaldo, panicking at the thought of actually living up to their family name, leads the brothers to attempting to make contact with the presumed alien invaders one last time. Meanwhile, the Crystal Gems, trying their best to figure out a way of turning off a satellite for good, would be met with shock when Ronaldo actually makes contact with them from his setup all the way back in Beat City. The Crystal Gems, desperate to stop the satellite's pulsar waves from activating at full power, decide to do the unthinkable by asking Ronaldo for advice, and he naturally recommends that they should try turning the system off and on again. Surprisingly, this seemingly pointless piece of advice causes Steven to remember that he's actually already seen the satellite's true power switch with Amethyst. Steven gets thrown by one of his teammates for the third time that day and uses his huge amount of momentum along with his new mastery over his own gravity to turn off the satellite's true power source once and for all, at exactly 1 second before Beat City would have been completely decimated by a fully charged pulsar wave. The Crystal Gems, completing one of their most emotionally exhausting missions yet, make sure to shower Ronaldo in genuine appreciation for assisting them before returning to Beat City themselves on Lion's Back. The citizens of Beat City show their gratitude to the Crystal Gems for saving their lives and shower Ronaldo in the love and respect that he always dreamed of, before he'd get brought back to reality when his sick father, who missed the entire gravity crisis, begins to greatly doubt the report written in his son's blog. You ever wonder what a biological weapon designed by Home would look like? Well, let's find out. Created by Rebecca Sugar herself and written by Shane Michael Vidori, Steven Universe Harmony not only revealed one of Homeworld's oldest secrets, and no, Amethyst isn't violating Spinel right now, but the comic issue also easily brought us the darkest and most action-heavy story arc to come out of a series ever. The comic issue being set after Steven returned to Beat City through Lassie's head while he was being hunted down on Homeworld, opens with the Topaz duo attempting to recover information on the Earth as a result of a direct order from Blue Diamond, when one of them accidentally bumps into an ancient biological weapon called a Harmony Core. According to the Topaz duo, this ancient weapon was specifically designed to only affect organic life, along with any gem that was unlucky enough to come into contact with it after reactivation. In addition to this, we learned that even if one Harmony Core is reactivated, then every other functioning model that has ever existed will also begin the exact same process. But on the bright side, Harmony Cores will also automatically shut themselves off after 1 century. so that's nice. Meanwhile, on an abandoned homeworld base that was built on the Earth during the Gem War, a long-forgotten Harmony Core begins the process of reactivation. At the same time, Sadie, feeling restless because of the fact that she didn't have a job anymore, slugs her way out of bed in order for her to get ready for band practice. Sadie sends a text to Lars as part of her morning routine, but would be met with a deep level of sadness when she remembers that Lars still hadn't returned to the Earth after forcefully being taken off planet. The Crystal Gems, initially hoping on taking the day off, would be confronted with the highest stakes mission of their lives, when Garnet's future vision shows her vivid images of the countless horrors that awaited herself, the rest of her team, and the entire Earth at large within the next few days. Naturally, this sudden realization causes Garnet to begin frantically searching around for the rest of the Crystal Gem, starting with Steven, who left the house earlier to meet up with Sadie for band practice. After setting up their instruments, Sadie and the suspects perform one of their newest songs titled Hey Bigfoot, a song that mainly focuses on celebrating how huge and perfect Bigfoot's pair of feet were, before they'd get interrupted by the Crystal Gems, who came by to escort Steven back to the temple after hearing about Garnet's vision. The Crystal Gems warp to the abandoned homeworld base in order for them to stop the Harmony Core from completing its reactivation process, but would be met with a wave of deadly sentries that were all determined to continue serving the original creators. Yeah, why are Connie and Peridot here? Garnet's future vision specifically showed her that they were the most at risk of getting absolutely destroyed by the Harmony Core, and it's not like they were necessary for the mission, or maybe they are. Let's keep moving forward. After getting blasted by one of the area's sentries, Steven gets flinged to another section of the base, leading Amethyst and Pearl into deciding to fuse in hopes of gaining the strength needed to save him. Fascinatingly enough, neither Pearl, who was extremely close to Pink Diamond, or Peridot, who was basically an heir to Gem Mechanic, knew about the Harmony Core's existence, but based on Peridot's assessment, it seemed like this Harmony Core was getting stronger by the second. Garnet stops Peridot from touching the Harmony Core because of her newly gained foresight, so props for that, but she seriously shouldn't have been here to begin with. The Crystal Gems taking a moment to figure out how they should go about dealing with the ancient weapon if they weren't even capable of laying a finger on it, leads Steven into taking a calculated risk by bubbling the weapon himself. Steven, fearing the unforeseen danger that could arise if he sent the weapon to the temple through the bubbling system, instead decides to carry it back to the house without letting go. The following day, Steven, being unable to attend band practice because he would be too busy keeping the Harmony Core from ending all life on Earth, allows Amethyst and Peridot to choose which one of them would take his place by playing a game of rock, paper, scissors. Amethyst, winning the game, bids Peridot farewell and good luck on a new journey of learning how to play the guitar. Peridot actually gets really into performing with the band, so much so that she actually goes a little bit overboard by smashing the spare guitar that was given to her by Sadie, causing her to get kicked out of the group. Later that day, Steven, learning about what Peridot did to Sadie while holding onto the Harmony Core, causes the weapon to grow considerably more unstable. So unstable that it ends up claiming Sour Cream and Greg's souls despite being bubbled. The unlikely duo is soon reunited with Vidalia, who's revealed to have also had her soul snatched by the Harmony Core. After helping to admit Greg, Sour Cream, and Vidalia to the local hospital because of a coma-like state, Connie breaks the continuity by successfully guessing the name of the ancient weapon that Steven was carrying on her first attempt. Just a reminder that none of the characters on Earth knew what this thing was called, despite the fact that us as the audience knew from the very beginning. Steven, suddenly waking up inside of a Harmony Core's dimension after trying to calm himself down, learns that he possesses the power to enter and exit the Harmony Core's dimension at will, a power that the other gems wouldn't be the greatest fans of him actually using. Also, Mia Dewey apparently became a victim of the Harmony Core off-screen. Another day means another band practice, and Amethyst, feeling terrible about the situation that recently occurred between Peridot and Sadie, decides to make things right by taking Steven's place without putting up a fight. The Crystal Gems, desperate for answers, decide to split up. Steven cautiously continues to visit the humans trapped within the Harmony Core's dimension, in hopes of finding some kind of clue that could help him free them. Garnet, Peridot, and Pearl continue to explore the abandoned homeworld base where they found the Harmony Core in the first place, and Amethyst spends the rest of her day on the drums while practicing with Sadie's band. Later that night, Steven, being awake for 3 days straight, naturally falls asleep, leading to an army of sentries invading the temple and Connie becoming the next victim of the Harmony Core. Amethyst, believing believing that Steven was trapped within the Harmony Course dimension, becomes the first gem to be put out of commission by touching it herself. Steven explaining to the other gems that he gained the ability to sense the other two Harmony Cores that were scattered across the planet, causes them to create a plan to find and contain both of them after getting Connie to safety. Peridot and Pearl warped to Mask Island in order for them to retrieve a Harmony Core that was located in another secret homeworld base, except this one was completely submerged. This mission results in Peridot becoming the next victim of the Harmony Core, leaving Pearl with the task of bringing the ancient weapon along with Peridot's gemstone back to the temple on her own. Later that night, Pearl figuring out the secret behind the Harmony Cores, being that they were simply weapons made with the power to trap light waves and by extension radio waves within a pocket dimension, decides to fuse the two Harmony Cores that were already in their possession. This results in our girl Pearl becoming the next victim of the Harmony Core, but unlike the other victims, Pearl's sacrifice would not be in vain. Gaining control of a Harmony Course dimension from the inside, Connie, Greg, and every other human who found themselves trapped would be allowed to return to their bodies by Pearl, who also made sure to let Steven know that the nightmare would be over if they were able to find the third Harmony Core, which just so happened to be hidden in the most dangerous base that was built by Homeworld on the planet. Garnet, up for the challenge, decides to warp to the South Pole in hopes of retrieving the Earth's final Harmony Core alone. Without wasting any time, Garnet breaks into the South Pole's abandoned Homeworld base and begins her search for the Harmony Core, but would be greeted with a fight against the strongest sentry left on the Earth, a sentry that had exactly what she was looking for implanted deep inside of its mechanical body. Garnet continues to carefully fight in what could quite possibly go down as being the most high-stakes battle of her life, a fight that would instantly end if she even misplaced a single punch. After being found by Lion, Garnet, no longer fighting alone, manages to take down the sentry without breaking a sweat. The Crystal Gems fusing all three of the Harmony Cores together leads Pearl to being able to release Amethyst and Peridot back into the real world, but this is revealed to have come at a cost. The Prime Harmony Core Sentry, making its way all the way from Homeworld, lands on the Earth with one goal in mind, completing its mission of entrapping all lives on the planet. Garnet and Amethyst form Sugarlight before heading into battle against the Sentry. The duo fight as hard as they could against the terrifying new threat, but end up coming undone just as quickly as they fuse in the first place. Steven helps Pearl to finally escape the Harmony Core's lonely dimension, leading the team to no longer holding back and putting an end to the Prime Harmony Core Sentry for good. After the Crystal Gems form Alexandrite in order for them to destroy what was left of the Harmony Cores, we'd learned from Blue Diamond that they were created on behalf of Pink Diamond to ensure that humans didn't unnecessarily lose their lives during the Homeworld invasion. 10 years ago when I was 15, I used to be the owner of an incredibly controversial Steven Universe channel that gained over 200,000 subscribers, called Bubble O Steven. I need all of you to understand that when I make bold claims like Steven Universe managed to create one of the most inclusive fandoms on the internet, and it's safe to say that the series definitely managed to accomplish its goals, I'm literally saying this as someone who went up against some of the most toxic fans in the entire community multiple times over. Let me just get that. Okay, but then again, I've depressingly lost count of the amount of Steven Universe fans that I managed to hurt during my run as Bubble O Steven.
It's time for you to know where I really come from.
Being an OG Adventure Time fan who closely followed Rebecca Sugar after her amazing work on Simon and Marcy's story arc, I became obsessed with Steven Universe ever since it began.
And this hero's name is Steven.
Anyone want a wet bagel?
Steven Universe, a new series coming in November.
After starting the most successful Bubble O Steven channel, yeah, I technically own 3 Bubble O Steven channels, but we'll get to that. I spent the majority of my time during my teens creating every type of video that you could possibly imagine based on the show. Music videos, theory videos, community votes, mistake videos, top 5 lists, memes. And I even made videos that pinned the gems against each other by manually counting which one of them talked, sung, and cried the most. My proudest creation from this era by far was this expansive Steven Universe fanfiction that I began writing with my audience, but sadly didn't get the chance to finish, called Steven Universe Interactive Stories. I basically got the idea to use YouTube polls to make an ongoing Steven Universe choice-based game, back when the platform actually allowed us to add polls within the videos themselves. Think Telltale the unofficial Steven Universe series. While the first 3 chapters were archived by one of my past viewers, which I'm beyond grateful for, the rest of them will most likely never be able to be recovered again. We were at least 20 episodes deep into the series, but it could have been a little bit more. Again, this was years ago. Over time, I'd get the opportunity to meet an amazing group of people who I'd eventually grow extremely close to and FaceTime with almost every day, one of whom became my first girlfriend. As sad as that is, they were honestly some of the most creative and ambitious people that I've ever met, still to this day. Animators, artists, and YouTubers just like myself who started their channels and Tumblr accounts simply out of love for Steven Universe and its famously positive community, but this of course wouldn't last forever. Nobody could have guessed it at the time, but the Steven Universe fandom was about to have a series of brutal blows dealt to its once spotless reputation, all taking place within an uncomfortably small period of time, being 3 massively popular hit pieces published by ER, Easy Peasy, and Lily Orchard, the widespread coverage of Zami's disturbing experience with a group of unhinged fans, and the controversy surrounding the show's excessive leak situation. Now, I don't feel the need to touch on the hate campaign against the series sparked by these 3 weasels, just because of how overly covered it's been at this point, and I seriously don't think that it'd be appropriate for me to speak on behalf of Zami, so I'm instead only going to be focusing on exposing why the Steven Universe leaks became such a massive problem during the series' run, and I feel comfortable in doing so because I was unfortunately one of the main advocates pushing the leaks. That's right, my plan to prove that the Steven Universe fandom isn't toxic begins with me confessing all of the borderline toxic things that I did when I was deep in the fandom.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
It's a deeply troubling feeling, being able to clearly remember why you did something awful, even if you might not necessarily agree with your reasoning for choosing to do so in the first place. For starters, Awestruck Vox was right. I wasn't a real hacker, but when you were once one of the biggest channels in the space, you didn't need to be to get your hands on leaks early. And as you could have guessed, I found myself in a situation to do just that. I genuinely didn't care about the backlash that I was getting from my peers and the community at large because my core audience seemed to love the fact that I was posting episodes early whenever I had the chance to. A decent chunk of them couldn't afford to pay for HBO Max, or they lived in countries where the series was much further behind and wouldn't be able to legally watch any of these episodes for months, similar to myself. But these excuses definitely doesn't justify my actions. Throw in the fact that I often chose to use the most exciting moments from the leaked episodes that I was posting to attract more attention, and you, my friend, had a real problem on your hands, especially if you were one of those people who took remaining spoiler-free very seriously. I unironically had a couple of contingency plans set up in case I lost one of my channels, which allowed me to feel much more confident when it came to testing out riskier content. The original Bubble of Steven channel reached 100,000 subscribers before it was taken down due to multiple copyright strikes related to my music videos. And my second Bubble of Steven channel, which is the one that went on the route of posting leaks, was eventually taken down as well, due to multiple copyright strikes related to the content that I actually put the most time and effort into. Which is irony at its finest. I mean, the actual leaks that I posted never landed me with any copyright strikes, even if they were occasionally removed from the platform. Also, this was around the same time that I learned my online ex-girlfriend had been cheating on me with another person in our friend group. Cheating in heavy quotes there, this was all online. We were just a group of awkward teenagers. Something changed inside of me when I lost my channel this time around though, and it wasn't just the overwhelming feeling of hurt and betrayal after distancing myself from my friend group. Despite the fact that I still had another Bubble of Steven channel with 18,000 subscribers to log into and continue right where I left off, despite the fact that I still had a humbling amount of fans begging me to come back on Steven Universe Amino, I instead chose to do something that I never thought I'd ever have the strength to do. I signed into my final Bubble of Steven backup channel and deleted it myself. I realized that I was simply at a point in my life where I needed to be way more concerned with my future, and I thought that focusing on my studies while making memories in the real world would be for the best, instead of pursuing an extremely time-consuming hobby that didn't really have the potential to meaningfully improve my life and often did the exact opposite. That brings us to the present day and the creation of this new channel, The Crow Reviewer. While I had absolutely no intention of returning to content creation in my lifetime, I missed the community aspect of being a YouTuber way too much to actually follow through on my nuclear decision. I understood that this time around it'd be a little different though. Unlike all of the other instances where I returned to YouTube and already had an established audience or knew exactly what I needed to do in order for me to grow my channel, considering the fact that I never actually had a decent mic to record my videos with when I was Bubbalo Steven, or knew how to write an engaging script to keep an audience watching to begin with, then it made sense that it'd feel like learning a brand new set of skills that I'd have to master instead of crushing it from the very beginning. I was comfortable with that though, and I was at peace with never feeling the need to bring up my past on this channel. But after some time, I realized that I was only truly happy making videos when I was discussing what I felt passionate about. And for better or worse, I was still passionate about Steven Universe. Whenever I made a video on the show, it also did extremely well even with my brand new audience, or that's at least what I thought. I unintentionally began to attract people who used to watch me all the time when I was Bubbalo Steven, some of whom have been so unbelievably kind in supporting me without expecting anything in return that I thought they deserved to know the truth. I want to sincerely apologize to anyone who I hurt or let down during my previous persona, and I hope that this video can provide you with some kind of closure on this aspect of the fandom's past. One of Steven Universe's goals was to teach us all about the value of acceptance, compromise, and forgiveness. I've personally seen the very best and the very worst of the Steven Universe fandom, and that's why I know for a fact that it isn't the most toxic fandom. It's simply the most jaded. We've all been through a lot together, and that's why I still believe that Steven Universe accomplished its goals.